Welcome back, everybody, to the Command Center. And we're here to fill you in on game number 2. There's 2 of them that'll be happening back-to-back here on Stream A and Stream B, which is Rainbow Six Bravo here on Twitch. Hello, I'm w7m, your host for the show, at least for this half of the day. And on the second game, I'm joined again by Demo and Extra Troika. Ollie, friends, we're well rested now, ready for our second matchup?
Raring to go. 2-2-0s to start the morning as well, giving us a little bit of a breather coming into things. I'm not sure the whole day's going to plan out like that, though.
Well, as long as it's not my shift, it's all good. Anyways, good games is what we're looking for here overall, stretched or not. And we're looking at one that could potentially be one of the best in the group stage going off of yesterday's results. That's w7m versus G2 Esports. What's the big setup for this one here? Because w7m are looking for a trophy, G2 are also looking for a trophy, but they kind of snuck under everybody's radar. What's the deal, Demo?
Oh, where do you begin? I would say that if yesterday was a little bit different for G2, and they did lose yesterday, this would be a much different matchup. But because they did win, now it's not as, I think, clear-cut as maybe what it would have been.
There's got to be a lot of focus on this matchup. Rogue is a very known opponent for G2. They play, Koi, should I say. They played them yesterday. Now coming up against w7m, it's an entirely different beast. You're going up against one of the tournament favorites right here.
And it's crazy to say because it's their first time playing at this level, which is pretty incredible. Of course, they have played in the majors. They qualified. They did very well over in the year. There's just a culmination, the cherry on top. And that would be a pretty big cherry if they were to make it all the way to playoffs already at an invitational. You mentioned w7m. Ollie, how would we continue with that? What can you tell me about the squad after yesterday?
Yesterday they had a great showing against Elevate. There was a couple of little hiccups here and there in terms of rounds, but it was by no means a difficult result for them to get. You're looking at the squad, Herd's, for me, one of the best players, real standout. We've watched him throughout BR6 in our time demo, and we've seen him rise through various different teams. I know you're itching to say something there, but I just love how they've brought this team together. And Julio, for me, that experience, that opportunity to really guide those players who aren't inexperienced, but they are a little bit younger, and like you say, haven't really played any Six Invitationals yet.
I don't think anyone actually realizes what this team has done this year and where they were last year. This was relegation fodder. That's what they were. They were not a good team. We had only seen it at full force week in, week out. They were not a good side. And I don't think we will ever see a team who is at the very low go all the way to the top in such a short space of time. Like that first split, we couldn't believe it. Unbelievable.
This is a Série B team that comes in Brazil, which is the, I guess, second level of competition inside of BR6. And in a year, they're now at the Invitational, and actually people looking at them as potentially the winners. The only team that really comes up in this way, in my mind, is the old Team Empire. Same thing, coming out from Challenger League. Look at what they did damage-wise in 2019. That was pretty impressive. So, hey, there's new stories to be forged, and there's new people that'll take up that mantle. Now, I want to talk very briefly about the strategy, because it seems like w7m have a very good balance in their 2 leaders when they're in the game.
Yeah, I think Julio is going to be bringing a lot into this squad. I think that's the guy, obviously, Ollie, you mentioned before, we know SI winner and has that experience inside the Brazilian side. And, you know, even being able to chat to Julio and interview him as well. You know, like even he couldn't believe the progress that this team has made because he was playing against them not too long ago, you know, inside of Brazil. And he just can't believe where they've went, and whenever the opportunity came, he jumped at it because he knows that they've got a good core foundation. You know, they've been able to work and build for over the past 3 majors, but they haven't actually broken through it, and he could be the answer why.
Volp's IGL is exactly what the team needs.
It is. They need that direction, they need that synergy, because they are a team that can play quite explosively off the back of one another, but there needs to be that cohesion there, and that's what Volps brings. We've seen him play inside of the BR6, as we've said, and that ability to sort of just control the troops a little bit. You're seeing that exciting LATAM flair with a little bit more structure, with a little bit more experience coming in now. They've really got everything going for them.
It's a very good mix of things on the squad, still being considered as new kids on the block in Brazil. But their opponents, G2 Esports, that flew under all the radars so far going
Not
into
everyone, thank you very much.
Demo,
hello.
I'll give it to you. You are very smart.
Yep, thank you. That's
Rainbow-
it. Stop the stream. That's us. We're done for the day.
I'm not
That's
done.
all we needed to hear.
In Rainbow Six Siege. And that's where it stops.
Yeah.
You can click that, use it as a ringtone for the rest of your life. But there it is. G2, they actually did it yesterday.
I've said this from the get-go from the past year. Everyone wants to hate this team. Everyone does. Everyone wants to see this team fail, okay? And I'll admit it, they have a few times, right? I'm happy enough to raise my hand and say, in transfers that you've done haven't worked out. But if you generally sit down and you look at each of the individual players in this side, and if each of them actually played to their potential, they are world beaters. No doubts about it. If Alamo plays to the peak that he did with Team 1, unbelievable. The guy was one of the best players that we had in the entire year of 2021. Doki, look what he's been able to do in his career. Always been a top 5 rated player in my eyes inside of EU. Benja, who's been one of the most exciting players we've had in the past year. Virtue and all the experience that he's had, he's the only one remaining since we had that whole shuffle 2 years ago. And then finally, top off, you've got Blur, who, keep in mind, has also had to deal with him transferring over to a new role. He was Ash 6 months ago. Now he's in Thermite.
And to top it all off, I think it's something that both Anne and Jacob talked about on socials yesterday. The win that G2 collected yesterday was their first win in 3 years and 1,095 days.
In best of threes, not just like
BO3,
overall. Don't worry, not that bad.
BO3 specifically, that is the first BO3 win that they have collected. Remember, the last one that they lost was against Fnatic. Where's Fresh? Okay, Jack, if you're listening to this, you know exactly what I mean. But here it is, Doki popping off. He flew under most people's radar, but here, what's the game plan also for them? Because it seems like their in-game strategy, especially with Benja on the squad one, it's really changed.
I mean, yesterday we've seen a very aggressive G2, very swing heavy. I don't know if that's down to the matchup because they know Koi. I think it's a matchup where if you do get an aggressive and you do rattle Koi, it's going to work well. I don't know how it's going to work against W7M. I feel as though if you try those stunts against this team, especially you got someone that match, see the back of his jersey there, KZ, I'm telling you, Ollie, I'm telling you now, he's something else.
We have a graphic that our analysts had asked to be prepared. So let's put it up on the screen and try to make sense, at least for me, make sense of it. Here is Alamau. Best of ones versus best of threes on the G2 side.
It looks like a vibe check, doesn't it? It's like, stop, let me check your vibe. Like the outstretched hand. I think it's a great photo.
Vibe check for G2. They really made it happen yesterday. No fraud Lamau in that server.
Well, I mean, this was something that Demo brought up. You've got a bit of a theory cooking here, haven't you, Demo?
Which
Yeah, I think Alamau is your big game player.
Really?
I think he's, yes, because I've witnessed a lot of best of threes with him in it. I think that whenever it comes down to playing against the big teams in the big matches, he shows up. Sure, it's all well and good he loses, drops like 2 kills against TT9 in EUL, but whenever you actually look across his best of threes, he always performs. You look at him during the past 2 majors. You look at him during, whenever they played against Rogue, he was phenomenal. Still lost, but he was incredible. You look back at last invite, whenever he was a Team 1, he was always at the top of that team. Whenever it comes to LAN, whenever it comes to best of threes, he thrives on it. And he played well yesterday. He played really well yesterday.
The best position for Alamau to be in my opinion, isn't top fragger, it isn't top of the leaderboard. As long as he's second or third, he's doing his job. Because there are star players on the side of G2. We know that Doki's got it in him. We're looking for it out of Benja, and we're expecting a big shift from Benja.
Where's the butt?
To go in and get all of those kills. And as long as Alamau is in that second, third spot and holding his own, going neutral or just about positive, G2 have got a good chance here.
Let's then see where they're going to be playing on. It's so good to see Fabian happy and smiling behind his teammates. Usually, I mean, we're used to Fabian being the Grinch.
He's in good spirits. He is in very, very good spirits. And I think it's good to have him, I think obviously we have to mention Titan. He's taken a massive workload off Fabian in its own, doing a lot of the statistics. Fabian's just focused on the players, focus and making sure they're in the right.
Do statistics for. Anyways,
you don't work with him anymore. You don't need to criticize him all the time.
I've slept in the same bed as this man.
Right. Well, we don't need to get too personal.
Anyways, for those jealous out there, how
about
about we change our topic demo to our map bans to see exactly where we're gonna have to go to in this series. Again, it's 4 bans, pick, double ban, decider. And who went first is G2. They'll pick Bank, the start on the attacking side, w7m, starting side defense, as they picked Kafe. And finally, it's Theme Park. So w7m had the last ban, and they removed Skyscraper. Now, ban phase overall, Ollie, what are your thoughts on it?
They're both fairly low preference maps for the other team. W7M have got a very good map pool and they will play anything, but Bank is one of their lower preference maps. Yeah. So it makes sense there for G2 to pick into that, and likewise, G2 don't like to play Kafe all too often, so w7m taking a little bit of an advantage there. What is it with these theme park deciders? We had a lot of theme park deciders yesterday.
Theme park's great. I love theme park.
There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't know how we've got a theme park. I want like an Oregon or a Clubhouse. They're usually your decider maps.
Because G2 used to suck at it, and then they played a lot of it, and suddenly
they got good at it.
I mean, yeah, they picked it famously when they played against Wolves. I think it was day 3 or 4 of EUL in the last stage. They came in and were like, "Oh, Fabian, there's no way they're going to play theme park," and suddenly it's in the bans because it's the best of one. You go in, G2 had no preparation whatsoever, and somehow they roll over Wolves in it.
I mean, for all that w7m don't pick theme park a lot, they've got quite a high win percent ratio on there, as opposed to G2.
What about Bank?
Middle preference for them.
The Bank one's a weird one for me, because it's generally the map that w7m always ban. It's usually their go-to ban. And the fact that it's been allowed let through. Well, I don't know if it was me, but if I was like doing like the map bans, that would kind of like ring an alarm, like, okay, you'd probably expect them to ban Bank, would you not? You know, if you're G2 and you're sitting down and you look at the way that they always ban Bank, you would expect that, oh, that's going to go out first. But then to get to the point where, oh, they've left it open. Yes, you could sit there and say, oh, they've left it open, let's get it now, they don't play it, that's really good. But it could be a trap, which is the worry for me.
How much have G2 practiced for this? And famously, Brazilian teams will stick to one another when it comes to all the sort of practice before an event, especially with teams that, you know, are not attending. I mean, even those that are attending, there's a very regional thing in it. And, you know, last time Alama was part of the Brazilian crew was quite a while ago. It was over a year ago. So, you know, things might be a bit different when it comes to what strategies you can pull out of that.
You think that w7m have been scrimming against MIBR on Bank or something like that? Is that the theory graph that you're going for?
Keep in mind, G2 went to LA and they probably scrimmed like a lot of like North American teams, Central and Latin American teams. So that was the fear in the past. I don't know, maybe if that was something that they had the time to work on, because they spent like a week in Los Angeles.
Oh, he's got the shades on.
Wearing the glasses.
My goodness.
I would be very careful on G2 also to not celebrate when it's too early, because I would like to remind everybody of the photos that were posted by our wonderful social media manager over on our Six Esports Twitter account yesterday of Koi before the Koi VG2 game, where Koi were dressed up in their white robes as if, you know, they're just getting out, they're sleepy, and guess who was put to sleep?
I mean, G2 have got Alamau specifically has got the biggest potential meme on his head with the clown thing.
Fair enough.
The clown video that G2 released, it's just got it written all over. It's just waiting for it.
Yeah. To be fair, the best clown impressionist here is Derry Holt. So that's, I mean, he did it. It was great.
Do I have a final point just to make one thing as well?
No, actually, because I just got the call.
I was just going to say, G2 generally does really good against teams outside their region.
You still
that's
made
all
it
I was going to say. Yeah, but it's a little fun.
Okay, fair enough. A little point. Yeah. But who wins it? What's the score? Just give me name and number.
2-1 G2.
All right.
I think it's going to be 2-1. I don't know who wins.
Come on, flip a coin.
W7M to be different, yeah.
All right, thank you very much, lads. We are going to launch our game. So on to our casters. For those on the B stream, don't you worry. We're going to set you up for your matchup in just a minute.
Thank you very much, Milos, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Day 2 is getting started here at the Six Invitational. Of course, we're now getting ready to move onward into our second matchup here. Bound to be a good one, of course. G2 setting their foot down yesterday by being able to best out Koi in 2-1 fashion. W7M as well looking to take a step forward here today by seeing if they can best G2. Stokes, get your opening thoughts on this matchup, as I believe we're going to get started with map number 1 in just a second here.
I think this is going to be one of our more fun games here today. W7M up up against a newfound G2. You know, we've worked Benja in here. We've got a couple new toys to mess around with. Also, Doki playing out of his mind right now. Back to like Navi Doki days. So very excited to see what G2 can do up against w7m. Now, speaking of this Brazilian squad, they just had a pretty big bout when it came to Jönköping, able to go pretty deep in the playoffs. Not able to get it done, though, as they did end up dropping their match to BDS. But that's all said and done and dusted, as we like to say. And, well, that all leads us to here. w7m haven't really changed too much. They've just had that time since Jönköping to kind of work on things and see what they want to try and do with their squad. And it really paid off yesterday up against Elevate, where they were able to take that series 2-0. And probably looking to do the same here up against G2 as we're getting started here on Bank.
Nook and Montaigne are going to be our two attacker bands being knocked out of lines. Pretty well what we've seen, especially for interregional matchups here between EU as well as Latin America. Sola still the first to be knocked out. If she's not knocked out, she's picked pretty much every single round. So it makes perfect sense there. Just far too universally useful at the moment here. So she's often first in the pecking order to be eliminated for that side. And then finally, Valkyrie, very much for the same reasons. It's just obviously to a lesser extent, so we don't see her banned out as much.
It's a little bit more map dependent with Valkyrie. Yeah. She's good on every single map. She's just one of those operators, obviously, with the cameras. The intel is always going to be good for you, but Bank definitely one of the maps where she is so very dominant with the amount of places that you can hide those cameras. Also, a little fun fact here, we are into our second day here for the first stage of SI 2023, and that means that we haven't had to get too many maps under our belt and actually bank the lesser of all of the other maps. It's going to be the only play that we've had so far coming from yesterday. This will be the second one that we have on the docket as of now with w7m and G2. So this will probably be changing up stats-wise pretty soon here, but as of right now, it's a 30% defensive win rate overall, which is astoundingly low.
Makes sense to some extent when, of course, we've seen the kind of changes over the past year or so to make things a little bit easier for the attackers overall, as obviously they have added things like repick and whatnot there, and then we've seen other changes, but 30%, that's a massive drop-off there, just when you consider it overall compared to what it used to be. You look at it like 2-3 years ago, where you would have most maps at like 55 or so % leaning towards the defenders, so a pretty big shake-up there. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. You guys probably caught it there. I think we had a sound bug, so give us a second. I think we got to launch the clients and do a rehost, and then we'll be back in game.
All right, get everybody back in, make sure that the client works, and then we'll get it back on your screen. But let's dive a little bit deeper into this, because this is definitely interesting for Bank, because it just had a recent change over this last year as well, where we ended up bringing it back into the map pool, and it's been a pretty feisty map across the board. You know, they changed up a lot of the angles for the top floor, making it to where the skylights and all that kind of stuff aren't easily abusable like they were before. Like, there's still some angles that exist, but not nearly as much. So they were trying to make it to where the defense had a little bit more say in the action on that map, but it doesn't really seem like it's come to fruition in the exact way that they've wanted it to. A lot of these teams still quite dominant on the offensive end, and that's been through not only a lot of our stages across the entire world, but also a lot of our tournaments as well.
Yeah, we've seen teams try to play around with some of the more open layout of some of the sites, specifically open area itself there, where we've seen the roam game kind of extend out towards it a little bit more. And as we take a look over at that one, defensive win rate for this event, actually for that specific site, is currently sitting at 0% as well. So even that site as well, where we've generally seen the most success for like an extended roam game into something like stock, is just not hitting its mark. To be fair, again, that's only with one play so far at this event, so that'll probably be changing up a bit after this game is concluded, but it's still a pretty drastic stat.
Yeah, one play for the map overall, 2 plays for the site. But the weirdest thing about that is the fact that, you know, that's usually that tertiary site that we see teams go to as like the backbone of what they're doing on Bank for their defensive strategy. A lot of teams have found a lot of success with this bomb site, so pretty interesting that that's already kind of bubbling to the surface when it comes to Bank. We'll see if that has anything to do with this series here once we get back into the map. But, I mean, so much to talk about when it comes to these two teams, luckily enough. We are checking the client right now, folks, so hopefully we'll be back in soon, but sometimes that doesn't work out, so we're just going to keep things rolling on here. As for w7m yesterday, they had an amazing scoreboard. Herds, JV92, and Volps all above a 1.20, 1.23 for Volp, so if you wanted to go even higher, you could, but we like to make flat numbers here, make it easier for everybody. But yeah, amazing day for w7m across the board, especially with their entries and everything else in between. Also, Julio, I mean, he went 6 for 9 on his KD spread, so -3, but get this, 59% survival which is actually just absurd. I believe it was almost 10% higher than anybody else in the entirety of yesterday. So let's check it really quick. Actually, no, it's a little bit less. Nathan and Tyron actually both 54%, so apologies about that. Both of them also lights out when it comes to those numbers, but Julio doing his best to stay alive with that important utility and get those plants down for his team, always being a useful piece in the back line.
All right, well, looks like we're good to start this time, folks. So we will lock this round in here, get ourselves started with what I believe is going to be a pretty straightforward basement hold from the W7M roster. They are going to swap Julio in, of course, over towards the Clash to try and slow things down to a pretty drastic degree once we actually reach that very scrappy fight for areas like server or the red hallway, depending on the way that G2 wants to play it. And that's what the hope is in bringing Clash, that they can just put a giant obstacle in the way that would be nigh impossible for G2 to properly get past.
And here's a man that we expect a big game out of, and two of them actually, as we go back-to-back, Benjamaster and KZ. KZ, one of the best in the business when it came to Jönköping, so very dominant for W7M. Some incredible games. Go back and watch those if you haven't. You'll definitely know his name from that moment on. That's why we were so very prepared for this matchup right now. And what possibly W7M, the Brazilian squad, could bring to the Europeans, well, for the most part. As we know, we got a couple of Australians and some Brazilians of their own leaking into G2. It's a multicolored deck for them. Stokey's going to be working his way down white stairs.
Well, already starting the descent, G2 with some progress being made already, but at the same time, W7M, for the most part, allowing this to happen. Just going through the motions of slowly peeling back from any extensions if they had any whatsoever. So it's been a fairly lackadaisical round for both teams so far, but things are about to heat up over the next 30 seconds or so. G2 starting to establish crossfires to fend off the aggression from blue stairs if we do end up getting it. Away from that, of course, you can see the hatches being worked on here. That'll start the descent over the next few moments here. Not going to be able to prevent that server hatch from being popped here. KZ in the area as well, looking to assist that Clash if things get a little bit too hot. Thankfully, they still have plenty of time to play with here, so that moment has been pushed a little bit deeper into the round.
Kicking the can down the road as of right now for this execution. They've at least gotten some semblance of a wrap around this site. Get the initial hatch open here, but they don't want to deal with Clash just yet. Doki's going to find himself an easy frag on a JV92 as some of his bullets go wide on the main stairs. Volps looking to recoup, but really nothing doing for W7M at the current moment. G2 have done a good job of moving things back and forth across this mid-floor and keeping W7M guessing, but finally KZ will step up and he's going to take down Alamau as they simply think that W7M are going to wait over inside of blue stairs, but surely not. They go for the flank and it's working out masterfully for them. Doki will finally fire back, but what's it worth at this point? 2 versus 3 and a lot more to do.
Doki with an A getting primed here. Herd's going to expect it, gets a few shots back at it. Thankfully, banks off of one of the vaults there and is going to be able to save himself from that, but can't save himself from the outright push. Doki makes it work anyway, just through brute force, taking down Herds. Re-equalizes the player count down to a 2v2. Virtue tries to make a move as well, but the angles don't align and it's the Clash on the other side of it anyway. And even worse now, Doki has finally been dropped on that crossfire from Elevator back in the gold. So with that said, Virtue though, actually not going out. If he can chase down and get the Clash here, might still be able to close it down, but time is running out. He's not going to be able to get it done. I don't think the Clash is too pervasive here. And with that, the defenders win it on the timer.
That right there is why we used to see Clash get banned a decent bit. So very solid in positions like that. Stay alive, able to slow down the opposition, making gunfights really easy for your teammates as well in certain circumstances. But, I mean, for both sides of the coin there, I think they both did a pretty bang-up job. The only thing that G2 really messed up on is that they didn't have a read as to what was going on in the blue area. Even though they took it prior, there was no cam work or really any eyes on what could have potentially have rolled out of there. And that's really where the damning process started, isn't it?
Pretty much the case. Once again, that was that great flank maneuver from W7M that really starts the downfall. I'll give us a moment here, folks. Fortunately, we do have another small tech issue. Don't know exactly what's going on yet. I'm going to assume it's like sound or a computer issue for that player down on the far right there. So give us a second. We should just be able to pause this, fix the issue, and get us back into the game. But definitely a good statement being made there by W7M with that basement hold. Now it's about how they expand out from that, of course. The sites beyond basement do tend to be quite difficult for the defenders to maintain. And again, going back to that stat we mentioned before, you can see exactly why only 30% defensive win rate so far on this map. To be fair, again, only from one play, but still looking drastic at the moment.
Well, it's looking better if you're W7M. They're already beating the odds here as they got one under their belt. I think the key thing there for them was that flank, obviously. Like, we're going to keep harping on it because it's the only way they win the round. The basement setup is just way too difficult to try and fight from a downward position there. Once they get the hatch control and start trying to play with a plant going down, there's really no way that you're going to roll out of there and do anything that's going to, you know, have any merit to it. You're not going to get open area control or anything if you're playing against a team that's worth their snuff. So, you know, I think that was really their only chance to try and get one over on G2, and it just happened to work out in spades for them, especially that really, really easy shot that he had from Archive onto Alamo. Alamo had no idea that that was coming and just completely opened up the gates on him. Made it really, really difficult for G2 to try and work out the situation because now they're on multiple levels, right? You're in the basement, you're also on the mid floor, and you're trying to, you know, coordinate everything that's going on from that mid floor downstairs while taking all of those fights. It's just so many things to worry about all at one time.
Very much the case. So moving into our second round in just a moment, it does look like W7M have the open area soft lock. So once again, going to be really testing their capability to extend out here and properly keep their team formulated to shut down what is going to be a bit of a tricky push from G2 if they approach it in the normal fashion. Still trying to take that lower blue control as well as main stairs to push in with some additional pressure potentially coming up from up on top after they're able to steal away both Janitor and Stock there. Can turn into a real heck of a tough hold for the defenders when they are really pushed into a corner and have very little room to play with. So we'll have to see how much of that defensive room they can potentially try to maintain on round 2 when it starts up here in just a moment. Bringing quite a few pieces of utility to potentially help out with that as well. The Warden, of course, probably going to be swapped in here to be able to mitigate some of that flash dump and other forms of utility that are going to be thrown in for G2's execute. The Maestro as well to try to get that extra information, and then Hurt specifically is going to be more than likely picking up the Azami just to have that extra bit of independence by throwing down the barricades whenever the need arises.
This would be our first successful staff room open area defense if W7M was able to muster it. G2 bringing a lot of utility that'll be quite useful for this, especially with Benja working his way onto the sledge here. Already had that prior, but definitely pretty prolific when it comes to this site. Able to break up the flooring instead of Stock as well as Janitor and make it a little difficult for some of the defenders to try and sit around in the cubicles that they so more than likely will choose. So for G2, it's looking like a pretty routine lineup across the board. Really like Virtue keeping this Dokkaebi up and about as well. Always fantastic for maps where you're going to have to deal with a potential roam game or a flank coming through. Can toss those logic bombs down and really assist your teammates just with their spatial awareness due to that vibration.
Once again, folks, if you are just joining us, currently working on solving a technical issue with one of our PCs or one of our computers there on the right for W7M's side. We should be rejoining the actual game in just a second. We do appreciate your patience while we look to quickly resolve those issues and resume the game. If you, once again, have just tuned in, well, spoiler alert, we're only one round deep, thankfully, but it is in the favor of W7M as they just took that initial control on the defensive side of basement here on Bank and are going to be looking to expand out from that over to staff and open area for the second round here. G2, of course, looking to get revenge upon that. Actually came very close to winning round number 1. Unfortunately, there was a clash standing in their way as the last player standing. There was only one other member of G2, so it was a little bit of a Looney Tunes episode there, trying to take him down in time, just couldn't make it happen.
Now, I will say Julio is not a Clash main as of this tournament. He's playing Thermite and Smoke for the majority of the time, but when you can work that Clash in, especially in circumstances like that where it's pretty close quarters, she's fantastic at what she does. And we get to see it on full display right there. The delay, the ability to just elongate the round to an annoying degree. Clash brings all of that to the table, and it makes it super difficult to try and deal with from an offensive perspective if you don't bring any of the tools to actually deal with her. And it's gotten a little bit more difficult to bring those tools as well, because back in the day when Clash was a hot commodity, right? Zofia was also a hot commodity, so people would just bring Zofia all the time because she was a 2-2 with concussions. We don't see Zofia nearly as much as we used to because it isn't as easy to work her into a lineup. She's still fantastic, but she's the 3 armor, and it's just not nearly as fun to play around with that.
Repick going to show up here at the last second for G2, moving away from the Twitch on Alamo, instead bringing the Ying into the fold here, which for this site, probably a little bit more appropriate. You're not going to have a huge amount of quintessential utility that needs to be taken out by a Twitch drone. For this specific site, the Ying dump is probably going to be a bit more effective, especially considering the, ironically enough, openness of the open area site there. Have a pretty good chance of actually hitting people with those candles in the process. Bit of a cheeky angle there below the copier window. Some players from W7M trying to see if they can get lucky with the early movement from G2, but not going to see it align this early on here. Won't find anything from that, so things will go pretty quiet for the next 30 to 40 seconds here.
Yes, indeed. G2 hot to trot when it comes to the top of square, but that's really about it. Fortunately enough for them, nobody really home around this top floor. Doki's going to be over on Banana, and this is going to allow them to start breaking up a lot of this flooring. Usually some teams like to play the janitor area up top, reinforce the entirety of that, but W7M have completely went against the grain. They've just reinforced the hatches and left the top floor completely dead, silent for the defense, allowing G2 to just take it at their own means, and it's exactly what they're going to do. Full control for them. They'll have to worry about this verticality for the remainder of the round. Doki going to start working his way down. We've seen this time and time again, not only during this tournament, during this match. So he had just done this a little bit earlier on, sneaking down main stairs to get a pick onto one of our defenders down low.
Doki still patiently waiting for anything that may present itself from the main stairs position, but W7M not playing too heavily into that. They're continuing to wait very, very patiently inside of their own setup. It's allowed for a bit of success to show up in the late round, back on round number 1, but you can see a little bit more activity as that's what threw them into a winning position ultimately as we got to the deeper moments of round 1 here. We just haven't seen that yet. The site's a little bit different though. Seems like for now they can afford to play this back. There we go. Patience works out. As Volps is able to find a lineup against Doki, but he's finally ready to move forward, taking him down and bringing it to a 5v4.
Cadella's in hand, but Alamau misses. Good news, though, he's got glasses, so it won't affect him, just his teammates. Frag grenade out there as another Candela will go in. This is looking like a fantastic G2 execution as the KD and, most importantly, the kill feed goes all orange. Volps will go down as well. It's up to JV to try and clutch this out, but all of a sudden, W7M with a chance here. Blurred down, Virtue, the last one remaining, and it only takes a single shot out of that cannon in order to take down the last remaining W7M member. And Staff Room open area will remain winless for now.
Nasty final shot coming in from Virtue there, beautifully done to seal the deal, but once more you can see the problems with this site and to some extent with this map overall here. Just so many access points for G2 to utilize to get into this site. By the time they had popped everything open there, the members of W7M did not have much of a choice but to sit back and just try to win it out via a gunfight. They got close on trades, especially at the tail end of it, but nowhere near enough when you consider how much G2 had swarmed around them.
I don't speak Portuguese, so I'm gonna leave that one up to the to the Brazilians because I have no idea what Alamau just said. But either way, it's a 1-1 now as G2 gets something going for themselves. We're gonna keep the Dokkaebi in the lineup and start throwing a couple of different things around here, including the Zofia. Looks like they want to work that in here for Alamau, and they're also going to pick up the Ying. It was previously on Alamau, but now it's over on Doki instead. And we've seen how lethal he's been so far on the ARX, but now a gun with a lot more bullets, the T95 coming in. And we'll see what he can do with these Candelas. More than likely going to be an explosive entry onto this top floor.
G2 once again on the field. Time to see how they will look to get the opening clear done here. W7M still with a little bit of activity on and across the map here after the setup phase has concluded. So possibility for some early action if G2 is fast enough to catch that. More likely not going to occur. I mean, the possibility for some of that at the beginning of the last round as well. Didn't really end up leading too much, so just that small chance of potentially seeing it here. Doki though wasting no time with his first Candela, just chucking it immediately into stock. Not going to get eaten up, but at the same time, not really going to affect anyone on W7M. They clear the room without too much of an issue there. Still have the double reinforcement as well on both of those stock walls, so certainly playable by W7M, even though they gave up the actual stock room.
Fairly plain Jane here from G2 is it's a fairly straightforward opening that we usually see here for this top floor. Very well done here with the X-Kairos. Place them low, let them go. As they're going to open up that wall, usually ends up avoiding the impacts if you do that. And that's exactly the case here. But you can see the other problem that G2 is going to have, and it's going to be KZ here, is he's going to constantly be able to rebuff that position with those Kiba barriers, constantly applying those kunai knives and making it to where the angle through E3 is no longer existent. It means that G2 can more than likely get a little flustered with those angles that could end up perpetuating from that position. Doki's going to work his way in here. I don't know if this is on our side. From the looks of his face, I think it might be on our side. Don't exactly know just yet. Yeah, I think it is going to be a host glitch, yep. And yes, indeed, we are going to get out here. So a little unfortunate for that. We'll get the official admin call and what we will be doing here, but I do believe it'll just be a full-on round reset.
Yeah, normally 9 times out of 10 in those situations, that does lead to a reset, unless the round itself was pretty much done and dusted at that point. We still had quite a bit to be played out there, so more likely just going to call it as an unfortunate series of events and quickly rehost that one and get us back in game. Folks, super sorry for all the rehosts here. We've had quite a few of them so far in this game. Unfortunately, we've been a bit plagued with them, but we're going to once again try to get ourselves back into the game as quickly as we possibly can, so your patience in that area is appreciated. As usual here, when we work to get ourselves back into the game as quickly as possible and get on with this match to see if G2 can keep the momentum rolling here to carry forward with the lead, or if w7m has that little bit of fight left to throw back at the European roster here, mostly European, of course, by playing into the upstairs site.
I mean, we at least got to see the initial ensemble of what was going to go on there. Looked like G2 really wanting to try and take things from the lobby side, get the windows open, try and provide some play in via checkers windows, as well as the elevator hallway when they had the Habana pop open that as well. Seemed like they had some solid strategy going on there, especially with Doki swinging in pretty quickly on the Candelas. So pretty fast acting play there, but unfortunately that one's going to be out the window. There's no guesswork involved for w7m anymore. You know, they go for the same thing, and then it's a fairly straightforward affair for them.
So we'll see if w7m has any potential variance to that, as to some extent their hand has been revealed now as well. It's going to be the other unfortunate part of this server crash here, is G2 does get to kind of rerun things. And it is confirmed now, folks, by the way, that we are just going to replay that round. Pretty much the expected result there. We'll have to see here if w7m is going to be up for the task on the re1. We'll be able to properly counter out some of the action we were seeing thrown at them from G2 here, or if G2 will also be able to remain strong inside of that. We do have all 10 players back into the actual server, and it looks like we're starting it up once again, folks. It should just be another 30 or 40 seconds here, and we'll be live once again with the action. If you are just joining us once more, G2 versus w7m here in map number 1 on Bank. This is the group stage of the Six Invitational. No eliminations on the line just yet. We got a new point system, which is giving our teams a bit more of a lengthy run here to be able to play things out throughout the entire first stage of the tournament.
All right. Well, fortunately enough for those of you that were late to the show, you haven't really missed much because we've gotten through 2 rounds. It's 1-1 right now, and we're going to be headed back upstairs for w7m. And as you were saying, John, I was kind of touching on it a bit as well. Either way you cut it for either one of these teams, the jig is kind of up. Everybody kind of knows the general play that's going to be going on now, because here's the thing. Past that, you have to use the same operators that you were using in that prior round. So they still have to try and use the tools that they brought to the table, and that's going to make it to where some of the lines that they attempt to go for are going to be very similar to what they once had. So we'll see if G2 wants to try and use Doki in a very similar fashion. We saw him trying to abuse the quad windows. We saw G2 overall trying to go for more of a lobby banana play. They could try and switch things up and go for square. They have everything that they need, you know, inside of this operator lineup to really accomplish anything that they're going to look for this top floor. And even past that, I mean, they could still work in some other things there, like, you know, they could put Doki onto the secondary hard breach for the Ying as well, and try and switch some things up, but don't really have to do all that much, especially when it comes to this top floor. As long as you got somebody like Habana, you're pretty good to go.
Opportunity here for Herds if he can capture it, but doesn't want to take the risk on moving forward to the direct peak. So ends up falling back behind the safety of the castle barricades. Things will unfold in a very similar way to what we saw back on the initial play for this round here. Heavy emphasis, of course, on the repel play for the players from G2, just trying to take out any and all utility that is accessible to them, especially, of course, with the Zofia in play. Flash Dove is going to be started here as well, so they can begin peeking into the actual hallway and see where these players are going to be positioned towards. w7m, though, very much playing this close to the chest after what we saw in the last round here. They do not want to take the risk on it, so they're trying to play things a lot more passively.
G2 not nearly as hot to trot as we saw initially here, and actually Benja going to be the one taken down now as Volps gets him from inside of Janitor, just simply playing the windows. Some Candelas in, but no fast acting play coming out of G2. But no, actually I'm mistaken. Doki back into very similar position to what we saw him prior. We've basically gotten the same round minus the picks here from w7m that have been coming pretty hot and heavy so far. Doki will finally be able to fire back up against KZ. He's going to try and transition this back into CEO. A big smoke play there. Doki's going to go down, and he'll be dusted by said smoke. It's a 2 versus 3 now with 1:20 remaining.
Blur flashed out, gonna call up Virtue to see if he can make the push forward instead to take control of main stairs. Fire back from member of w7m holding said stairs, with the remaining two still positioned in a deeper position closer to the site. Blur back in the fight here now, but there's not a lot of confidence for G2 to make this play work, and with good reason too. They still have a boatload of time to finish off this round. Just now reaching the 1 minute mark with Virtue, claiming a second kill here against Herds, bringing it into a 2v2 scenario.
Knock, knock. Drone activated.
G2 slowing things down now. Do not want to get overzealous with this. Every round up against w7m of the utmost importance. This is a team that is not easy to put to bed. It's exactly what G2 is looking to do here. It always starts early. Bird gets the worm, and that's what G2 is attempting to do. They want to get ahead early, close this map out as quickly as they can, try and get onto these other maps, see if they can get something done. Apply the pressure to w7m, and that's exactly what Virtue does. They'll take down Julio. It's up to Volps now. Try and clutch this out. He's been droned, though. You know he's inside of the quad window, so he'll work his way out towards Banana. The plant's going to start going down for Blur. Volps has to try and challenge the window, but the bullets, they're going to hit more towards the ankle side instead of the head. It's going to end up being a G2 round off of that play, slowing things down in that crucial moment. Really sent w7m for a spin. They kind of got lost in translation there, making it a lot easier for G2, especially after they started things off. Look at this, Benjit and Alamo both down, but needing Doki and the rest of the gang to step up here, make some big plays.
Well, a little bit of potential hope coming in here for w7m on round 4. We have officially made it around the rotation, of course, and we are back where they started and where they, so far, have been able to claim their only round. Back down in the basement. Interesting, though. Obviously, we didn't catch this on the operator pick phase, but we are immediately going to see it as we go in game. KZ bringing the Caveira into the fold for this round. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out. Obviously, it looks like it's going to be positioned for a roam game at the moment inside of Banana to see what kind of sneaky play he could potentially rotate out towards later on in the round, but we will just have to really wait and see what exactly KZ can deploy towards here, because this is just a roll of the dice as far as I'm concerned.
Well, a hilarious thing as well, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Benjamaster used Cav in the very first round of Villa for our very first game, and he got the very first kill downstairs in said Villa map. So, I mean, might just be coming back to haunt them here soon enough if we get an interrogation or something along those lines. I mean, w7m are most definitely doubling down on this. You can see Herds kind of applying ghost pressure in a certain sense. What he's going to do is he's going to stick around here, let them do some drone work, maybe show some face, and then he's just going to drop off and go somewhere else. It'll make his life a heck of a lot easier, unless he gets into some trouble with this, because now Alamo has gotten into a pretty solid position here inside of Printer, so he could just choose to stick up top as well. Really just up to him and really about how G2 plays around this. Either way, it's really just about staying alive and trying to waste some time. Oh, Doki, that might be the moment of this round right there, watching that drone slip by.
Virtue with an angle, but doesn't realize there's a challenger waiting on the other end of it, and KZ! Doki's hand is pushed directly into KZ's lair, and unfortunately, KZ is the one that's not ready for the fight. Herd's now going to try to make up the difference, but these are off on an island at this point, and now with no support to be distributed from KZ or anyone else on his team. This is a big issue for w7m. This extended play has not worked out to even the slightest extent that they would have liked it to.
And Doki's a small guy with a heavy hand, constantly smoking everybody. This time around, though, it'll be Herds with the pack smoke as he'll take down Alum out, equalizing this man count, making things a little bit more palatable. Unless Blur has something to say about it, looks like we're going to continue this carousel. JV92 will take down Doki. It's Benja and Blur this time around in the 2v2. We love these hotly contested rounds so far here on Bank.
The dip and dash as well from w7m, just constantly seeing players run up a staircase, grab a kill, and then immediately run back downstairs as well. It's worked out for w7m to at least hold their position so far in this round. Keep it locked to a 2v2. Still at a health deficit when you look at JV92, of course, having to take that previous fight, but things will at least have calmed down now as those final two players no longer want to risk anything beyond the boundaries of the actual site. So we can see server get popped open relatively quickly here. That Toxic Babe's not going to really slow anything down that much. They're still using these few extra seconds to be able to pop open the secondary wall here for server anyway. So Now we can start to see them walk towards it, and here's where that delay is going to be a little bit more effective. Still a second one in Julio's pocket as well after that one has been thrown down. But Blur, I believe he's found a safe pocket for himself. He's going to use it to go for the plant. No Nitro is on the defense. No way to stop this beyond a direct push. He'll get away with it. The plant goes down. And on top of that, though, the planter will also, or one of the defenders rather, will also be eliminated, leaving it all on Julio here, trying to run a flank. But it'll be read and taken down by Benja as G2 claim another successful attack for themselves.
Yeah, there was a drone in that kitchen, 100%. Like on that site, you're always going to have information game going on for the offense around that area, open area / kitchen. I mean, honestly, a fantastic round here for G2, but hotly contested from w7m. Back and forth we go. Just a lot of different moments that were quite awkward for both teams. You know, you have the roam game going on upstairs for w7m, and then G2 are, you know, pretty quick to thwart that, even though they had no idea that it was going on. Like, you know, just like moments like that where it's not exactly G2 planning these things out, it's just their natural cadence and ability that is taking it to w7m on this offensive side. w7m not really able to achieve all that much so far since the rehost, especially for KZ and Julio. Looking to see KZ especially step up. Julio usually the one trying to stay alive and play a lot of utility for this team.
Set of phase continuing to move for w7m. How are they going to try and re-bunker this position? It was too difficult to be able to hold the extended barriers of open room and prevent G2 from setting up for their really just closing hand grip on this site. They were able to slowly but surely crunch out any but all resistance from w7m. Very much going to be walking into the same type of setup here if they are not able to improve their position. So we have G2 out and about, and they'll begin the process of swarming around it now. So it's up to w7m to put the right aggressive foot forward here in the early round to stop that from being a success on G2's side of things.
Solid positioning here for w7m on the top floor. And just going to begin his journey here on square. Nobody occupying the marble skylights. So, fortunately for KZ, he will live to see another day, at least for the moment. Have E2 reinforced here, as that is indeed a good addition to the staff room open area defense. Shot he might want back there as he just missed Alamal's head. He's going to send some back as well. But this delivery service not really working out too well. Nobody receiving their packages. As Benja going to get back onto the drone game. G2's still trying to figure out the outline positioning of the w7m members. You can't exactly blame them. Really need to try and get things walked back towards site, and that's what this position from Blur is going to be, trying to adopt some more angles onto the hallway while Benja's working his way forward in Archive. This is going to be a fat angle for him as well if he's able to work up into it, but they've actually made just a little crack over here that they're able to work their way through. So a little interesting setup there. Blur's also going to go down. That was the hallway position, and Doki's going to trade it out on the top floor.
Doki keeping things even at least, and that's a best case scenario here for G2. As long as they can re-equalize the situation, we're likely going to be able to control it, thin out the numbers for w7m, prevent their own capability to spread out and prevent map control from being taken. The less of them alive, the closer to the chest and the closer to the site they're going to have to play. And you can already see them having swarmed back for the most part into the depths of open area. Herd's now trying to set up the Kiva barricades to make the actual late round play a little bit more palatable when G2 goes for that crunch, which they're starting to set up for now here. You can see the open area control, rather the square control here, which is going to be building up to just a moment here. At least an attempt to work their way through that and play into open. No hard breach to be seen, though, at the moment because of the earlier death of Blur. So actually ended up being a pretty good kill just in that regard, preventing them from opening up these extra angles. That alone may at least give w7m a fighting chance to win this round when everything is said and done.
And they've done a very, very good job of delaying G2. It looked like they were going to get all of the control necessary to plunge their way into this site, but it's escaped them so far. w7m keeping it close to the chest, keeping people alive. And not only that, dealing as good as they're getting with the man count. Volps is going to fire back as well. He's going to take down Virtue. A big nitro cell from KZ. Goggles on now, and no real way for G2 to try and work in unbeknownst to the defense. It's going to be up to Doki, and he's quickly dispatched. w7m w7m get their second defensive win and the first defensive win of the entire tournament on Staff Room Open Area.
Nice enough by w7m to bring things back into a more palatable position. Should be 2-3 now on the scoreboard, so still going to be down by 1. However, bring things back under their own control with a very nice early pick, eliminating that Hibana and taking away all the extra angles that the players from G2 would have liked to be able to deploy, such as going into the small corner office there on the side of open area, as well as the bigger wall leading into open itself that would have really limited the defensive play options there. Thankfully, able to avoid that with the early pick, and it made it far too difficult for G2 to be able to just swing their way in through the normal doorways here. So let's see what the final round will present, as w7m are going to go for that basement hold one final time. Makes perfect sense when you consider the results that they had up on the second floor. Technically got 2 plays on it there, and it just wasn't really looking that great. So they're going to go back down to the basement, where I think they have a little bit of a better chance if they play back on the clash strategy, which is exactly what they're going to do.
And oh boy, is this clash strategy one that got under the skin of G2. Not able to work around Julio, as it came down to the 1 versus 1 that could have been easily manageable for any G2 member if it had not been a clash. But Julio just kept shield dancing over and over again, making it quite difficult to try and shoot him in the legs. Volps is a literal psychopath. You need to get back in the building. Volps, it's smoke. There's so many like sins in this. It's not even a joke. I can't even laugh at it.
Well, he made an attempt.
He did. Yes, he did, Jonathan. Your name isn't even Jonathan. I don't know why I did that to you.
It doesn't even have that.
It's just John.
Stops at John, yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting in and of itself, but that's for another day.
I think it's pretty normal.
Yeah, and also the 3rd, but again, for another day.
Yeah, that's... You give him like my social security number now.
752. I'm just kidding.
All right, well, we've got the players on G2 working their way forward here. It's that usual slow roll in here, as they do have to check for the roam game, since it was alive and well for w7m the last time they played into the basement site. Obviously dead and gone, and now, however, as they are playing a full bunker setup. He's working its way in there too. An attempt to throw out the Electric Claw is not going to work, unfortunately, but a Nitro, let's see. Unfortunately, I think it's thrown at the wrong angle. It's going to land on the wall. Will not land deeper into open, where it may have found some damage. As a result of that, it is a dead ring.
Man, JV cannot have anything in this house. He's just trying to keep these hatches sealed and can't get it done. The EMP work, it's too strong from Alamau. Now both the hatches that are of the utmost importance are open. They can still try and get the elevator hatch open here. They have another EMP from Alamau, but is JV92 in the area? And also past that, does he have enough for the Electro Shuffle? I don't believe he does, so this is going to be a fairly straightforward affair.
Still wanting to try and open things up over by the elevator. All hatches being prioritized right now by G2, so they have all of those options. Herds, the first elevator hatch being popped now. Keeping a watchful eye over that to make sure that any drop is not going to be successful. And you can see G2 also starting to flirt with the first attempts to work their way downstairs. Julia will start to swing up towards top blue as well and begin the distraction here. And it will be quite distracting when you consider that we have 3 different players trying to work their way in from above server at the moment in square. One of them has just been dealt with. KZ will work his way over after claiming that kill to support Julia's position a little bit more. The flash blinding him out entirely. He cannot find the coverage of the shield. Ends up going down, but another member of G2 also getting down in the process. They'll be brought back up, however. We're now going to be moving forward. JV92 with one more trade into the favor of w7m once again to keep the numbers even at a minimum, but now G2 going for the plant. There is a Nitro sitting on Herds. Is he going to be in position enough to be able to stop this now? That is the big question. Where is it? Nowhere to be found, unfortunately. He is still rotating back over from the garage side of things. So the plant gets down onto the ground. The Toxic Babe also shows up far too late to help out with it too. Benja, with the counter angle still from up on top, is going to limit the rotation options for w7m as they try desperately to now get back into security here.
This is the hardest retake that you can have in Rainbow Six Esports. Bank downstairs. Look at the positioning from G2. How do you fight these angles? The answer, you don't. Everyone is inside of a barrel at the current moment. It's down to Herds. He can't even get an angle to try and fight back, and he will get slaughtered like a lamb. G2 Esports pick up the round, and that's going to be the half here on Bank.
So G2 Esports takes solid control at the 4-2 scoreline. To be fair, we kind of expect them to end up with here, given the way that this map has been playing out so far, specifically at this tournament. Definitely attacker-sided and a little bit more heavily leaned towards that attacker side as well. So just beyond that at the 4-2, maybe even a 5-1 is kind of the expected scoreline so far that has been played out. Now it's, of course, up to w7m to bring just as strong of a performance now that they have that inherent advantage of the attacking side. G2 will simply play first into, actually no, it's going to be Tellers, excuse me here, that they'll go to for their opening site.
Well, that's the trick about Bank. It doesn't matter what site you go to. They all relatively suck. Like, the only one where it's like, when you go to it, you're like, I have a snowball's chance in hell. That's basement. That's it. Everywhere else, it's like pretty up in the air on what could potentially happen. So, and speaking of up in the air, I think this is going to be the first time in probably, I don't even know, 4 or 5 months that I've seen Vigil in an operator lineup. It has been so very long because of just the amount of other utility that is so very good, and Vigil's utility is so unbelievably selfish. And that's not to say that obviously, you know, Benj is a selfish player for bringing Vigil, but just saying that's why we're not seeing him, because he's completely selfish in the ERC7 backpack. He only does it for himself. You could bring Solus or, you know, Azami or a bajillion other things across the list to fill in that slot and still roam with him. But they're bringing it to try and get some stuff done on this top floor. That's what Vigil is good at, these extended roam games and being hidden inside of that veil, trying to hide away from those drones and keep that info game murky.
Phillips will work his way up to try and start clearing out top square. Unfortunately, as you can see, going to be quite a few obstacles in the way of that clear, so he's going to need some help from his teammates, and he will get it. Blur at the same time here, putting himself into a bit of a peculiar position here by Stock. Thankfully gets out of the way of the opening of the barricades once they are ready to thrust themselves towards it, but did have himself exposed for a second or two prior, so was a little bit worrisome. Been able to keep himself in a good position. Does end up getting flashed away there by one of the last few hits on the Candela, so just panics, heads back down through the hatch, takes the safe option to get out of here, and that will give w7m the initial control of Stock. It doesn't necessarily lead into anything yet, however, though, as Jay, as well as the interior of the meeting room, still have players from G2 mounting a defense there, so even stepping into Stock may still be a little bit dangerous for w7m at this point in the round.
Well, the delay has worked out for G2, minus a loss of Virtue now. Benja is going to be forced off the top floor as well, so a little lagging than what we initially considered here, but still fruitful in a certain degree, able to at least keep Benja up and about. It'll definitely assist them going into the later portion of this round, which is about to be upon us. You can see the positioning from G2 pretty spread across this base floor. More than likely meaning that w7m doesn't have a lot of drone work done here, or the real ability to try and capitalize on that. Volts instead is just going to send it right in. He's going to get a heck of a lot of kills for doing so, actually. They didn't know about Alamal's positions and the ones off site, but send it into sight, you'll usually find yourself some bodies, and it seemed that the proper angle was accounted for from w7m. So going to take out quite a few members. Alamal's going to deal with the top position already. So he'll take down KZ. A big player requires big plays, and this would be one for him.
Alamal with one already behind him. Going to be looking to pick up the remaining two, of course, if he can get back in for the counter defuse. Very, very tepid movement here. And you consider the fact that he's playing with virtually zero intel, checking every single potential angle where someone could be playing at, but misses that one from Herds, who will finally shut him down and give the opening round of the half over to w7m.
Honestly, I think it was very well done from G2. It's unfortunate the entry wasn't exactly accounted for from you know, their angle. Just not really expecting w7m to hop right into sight, take those gunfights so quickly there. That's really what they were looking for, was the one hole they could work their way into for the actual execution. As for G2, though, I still think they did a pretty bang-up job on the top floor and being able to delay things out and keeping people in some pretty pivotal positions across that mid floor, all things considered. But obviously w7m still able to take it, as they were able to quickly get control of the site off of the back of those two big picks, get that plant down, and gatekeep Alamal for the remainder of the round.
So into round 8 we go. Members of w7m, of course, bringing a pretty straightforward lineup that we would generally expect to see for this type of site. However, they're going to change it up quite a bit here. Hard Breach is being swapped to a different player. The Nomad is being brought in for Volps. We've got the Osar coming out as well for Julio. which is not an operator that at least yesterday we got to see a whole lot of, so we got to get a nice little preview of that. Even Zero ending up being swapped in here for KZ as well. Zero definitely an operator we, for North American teams more than anything, tend to see deployed quite often on this map, just due to the free intel you can get with how high the ceilings tend to be in some of the rooms here. You can kind of sneak those Argus cams in, and oftentimes it won't be noticed. So seems to be a pretty good operator, but that's a pretty good jump from Doki. Knocks the head off of KZ, puts G2 on the right foot forward right from the beginning of the round. Unfortunately, cannot go 2 for 1, which would have been the ultimate W for him in this round. Only manages to trade it out 1 for 1 there and fails to escape back into the building.
Well, it has to absolutely suck that it was KZ, because I didn't even really get to see what secondary utility he had. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, John, and say he had secondary hard breach for the hatches that happened to be a necessity to opening the downstairs levels. Good news, though, is G2 actually on a roam game here, and the hatches are open, so that's not going to be that big of an issue, as well as they also have JV92, but Ace is not exactly the greatest at getting hatches, is he? Has to use 2 of those Selmas out of 3 in order to get a singular hatch, just a bad ratio. Never want to try and go for something like that.
It's going to go pretty quiet here, as we've been generally seeing inside of the mid-round. w7m trying to take it oh so carefully here, considering they were down a player, and as you mentioned, they're down a very important one with regards to their utility, specifically regarding intel, and potentially some of their hard breach too. Nice catch by Herds, but Alamau is going to get the credit for it, interestingly enough, and Alamau also takes down Herds, so just a little bit of an awkward scramble there between the teams. Not really a team kill, as he probably would have went down anyway, but just a bit of an awkward moment there.
He probably didn't expect Virtue to double back and try and take the fight.
Yeah.
I mean, but hey,
that's what I'm saying. With that peek, he probably dies again anyway, so it's like, eh.
Very true. JV92. He has snuck in the back door. I believe he got in via the hatch over here inside of the vault. And yes, he did. Just slipped in through the cracks. Volts is going to be able to pick up 1. Blur will take down 1 as well. But with this position from JV92, this could be the round right here. If they are not aware, this is all going to be onto the game sense of the G2 players. There's no way that they know this is going on. Blur will go down, but Benja gets 1. And oh, that's why you pick up a player like Benjamaster. Oh my God. G2, wow, what a play from Benja. So quick to the trigger and the transition to the player inside of the office.
Smoothly played by Benja, with certainly some worries for G2's capability to actually win that round. When you consider the free positioning that JV92 was able to get for himself, there was some question as to how exactly G2 did not manage to catch that. But thankfully, again, as you mentioned, Benja up to the task of shutting that one down and preventing disaster for the players on G2 for that round here. Now in front yet again, G2 just 2 rounds to go, and map number 1 of this series will be theirs. For the players on w7m, it's do or die time now here for the attack. They need to make these next few site plays work out. And now G2, of course, is going to be pushed into the more difficult sites to try and claim on the defensive end of this one, starting out with open area for this round, of course.
All right, w7m, this is the time. G2 is starting to get away with way too much on this defensive side. Remember, folks, especially for those that are just joining us, Bank does not have a great defensive win rate right now. In fact, it is absolutely abysmal. Before this map, it was at 30%. Now, granted, it did have 1 play, but that still basically stands because G2 ended up on a 4-2 split from the offensive side, obviously. Now switching over to defense with that last round and able to pick up that round. So if they can continue on this reign of terror, they could seriously shake up this stat line.
We'll see now. The w7m roster is going to be up to the task here of bringing some more attacking prowess to the table. They are trying to force the issue early on here. As you can see, JV92, at least one of the member of the squad, trying to go for early basement control. Control allowing them to swing up quite quickly into the hot zone right next to the open area site. This is looking like a quick one from w7m here, as they're also going to be trying to line up electrical control as well. This could be a big boom directly into the site for them here, especially when you consider Volps' operator choice coming in from below and immediately trying to go for a plant. Has to cancel it as Herds has found some resistance deeper into it, but just look at how smooth it is from w7m. 3 kills, no responses from G2 as of yet, and still the case as it's down to only Benjameister in the 1v5 clutch. It's a flawless round in under a minute from w7m as they make mincemeat of the defensive setup from G2.
Well, I can't wait to see all the Beast Coast players tweeting about this one. Oh my. They used their strat! You see that? They did it! It's open area. We did that one time. Yes, you did, guys. You did do that one time, and it actually worked pretty successfully that time too, didn't it?
I think it did, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those plays where you just keep that in the back catalog for a rainy day, and that still happens to be a round up against G2 Esports.
Indeed. So for G2, not at the end game position just yet here. W7m still has a few tricks up their sleeve, and that will immediately scare G2 away for another attempt on that site too. Completely agree with that rationale. As they'll instead head back over to Tellers. If I remember correctly, we're actually able to close that one down. But I may be wrong about that too. I think W7m did have a little bit more fight inside of that round to keep themselves in it. KZ is actually relocking the Amaru right now. So it could be in for some more fun on this one. The rest of the lineup is a bit more traditional, though, so I think that the overall composition is probably going to be a bit slower and a bit more traditional in the sense of how they're going to be pushing the site as well. But KZ, personally, maybe trying to get up to some shenanigans, specifically against the upstairs roam with access to that operator. Let's find out, as they are now on the board.
So what is our play this time, KZ? What are we looking to do with the Gara hook? Well, we have a lot of options on bank past just hatches. We also have a myriad of different windows on the top floor and some other ways to be able to abuse said hook. And I'm interested to see what they want to try and accomplish with it. For G2, it's a full-on mid-floor extension with a top floor roam here. You can see Virtue's applied some of those kunai to Banana to make it a more structured position to play around, but this seems to be where KZ wants to quickly try and get into a fight. Virtue's going to get rid of JV92 down low, but that's going to make it to where KZ can't exactly go for that swing anymore. There's no supporting angle, no supporting cast member to try and get into this play. Blur's going to add on to this heap as well. He's going to take down Herds. W7m have already lost 2 bodies in the first minute.
Not the booming start that we saw back on the open area push just a few moments prior. G2 putting their foot down for round 10 here. Taking a defiant stance against anything W7m want to try and deploy towards KZ. Maybe the last hope for some early round success here on the W7m side of things. He has been able to make it up to the spiral staircase without being noticed so far here. Has a good opportunity to potentially sneak up on Banana, but there is Overwatch for it. Virtue catches the play, knocks out KZ, and leaves only Julio and Volps alive. I believe both being played over by Square as well. Never mind, one is trying to work their way in from the basement. Julio, though, is so close to his end already here. Just been peppered down, shot after shot. Benja to finally finish things off as well. Takes him out, and Alamau to seal the deal with the flawless to end the round.
Incredible stuff here. G2 quickly getting this done. So we are on to match point now. W7m able to get a lot going for themselves, at least initially, inside of some of these rounds, but that one definitely not the case. G2 dispatching way too many members for W7m to try and make any semblance of a play unless they got something quite considerable going in their direction, which never came back on the pendulum swing. It was G2 all the way, full force and on the gas, and it doesn't really look like they're going to be slowing down anytime soon because there's nightmare fuel being added to this fire, John. It's the fact that, well, G2 now has access to the basement again.
Indeed, that is the case. So it's do or die. Very much so. It's been a couple times here, unfortunately, for W7m. They've been forced into it one more time to try and save themselves. Only 2 rounds is needed for the run back to take us to overtime, so it is not impossible in any sense of the word, especially when you consider that they are on the attacking side currently. But for G2, as Stokes had mentioned, going back to that basement site where the defense generally does have the best track record here, especially when you consider the amount of utility G2 is bringing to the table just to try and delay the players from W7m. This is going to be a rough one to try and work through. You've got the pulse on Alamau giving a constant info drip over to the players on G2 about where the execute is going to come from, which was a little bit of an issue the last time they tried to play it when you consider the sneak from JV92. You've got the Echo for an emergency stoppage of the plant if they should need that. Benja for the additional delay as well, and of course the smokes to build on top of that. This is a very annoying combo for W7m to try and work past.
Oh, it absolutely is. One that you never want to see when you start droning things out, and also a little bit of a mismanagement from W7m on the top floor. No one really aware of what's going on in stock just yet, as they're already starting to try and push into Square, and that was almost a free kill there from Doki, but it's actually going to be Benja instead that takes down Herds. That was the man that had already gotten tagged up at the top of Square, and they knew that he was probably going to try and go for something, so Benja just hops to instead and is able to deliver the death blow that Doki was looking for inside of stock. Now W7M once again sent reeling. They have to try and figure out what they can do with this map. And you can see they're really worried about G2 potentially roaming on this mid floor. We are going to have some bodies, but they're going to be in some pretty solid positioning. They're playing pretty close to the stairwells, and this makes it to where they can quickly, just like Benja just did, escape back down the escape hatch whenever you want to. They've already gotten their job done. They've dealt the damage to Herds, and now W7M has to try and make something of this, especially with Julio just really not doing too much right now in the kill department.
Well, halfway through the round now, and aside from the downing of Herds, it has been relatively quiet so far here. Benja able to at least escape from his previous scenario. Keep the presence alive for G2 here as they try to close down the map on this very round. Nitro going up. This one could sing as well, but it's too telegraphed. W7M read into it and thankfully back away from it as well. Doki still able to strike true as he knocks out another member of the W7M roster. This time, JV92. The Heartbreak's probably not going to be this too heavily since we're so deep into the round. Volt claims the first attacker-sided kill, but Doki still holding the line. That's until KZ gets a hold of him, however, but it won't matter as still far too many G2 kills happening back-to-back. And as a result of that, they'll be able to claim map number 1.
Fantastic bank there from G2, especially from the defensive side. Again, that's not something we normally see. And for W7M, that's really up to a couple of things. The abuse that we were seeing from G2 on a lot of those entries coming in, as well as Julio just not really pulling any weight in the kill department. The last series he was in, he was still able to get 6 kills across the board, but in this one, not too much. We're going to send you guys to a quick break, and then we'll be back with map 2.
I'm Nicholas Morton, but you know me as Pingu. I'm a 2-time Rainbow Six Siege World Champion and former top Rainbow Six Siege player in Pro League. Welcome to my Siege Ranked Bootcamp. We're talking 20 seconds left on the clock, you got the diffuser in hand, what do? Play the way that you're comfortable with, because you have confidence when you're in this position, that is when you're gonna be at your very best. Good luck.
Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Six Invitational. Just got finished with map number 1 between G2 Esports and W7m. G2 able to take solid control of Bank for themselves, especially looking at the defensive side of things. Here's the stats in front of us here. Quite a few of the members of G2 having quite the ball game there. Benja with the big clutch, of course, and then Virtue as well. Stepping up with a consistent basis on a round-to-round basis there with a 12-5 scoreline across the map.
Yeah, well, as when you look more towards the bottom of the scoreboard, not really working out for a couple of our players here, most notably Julio, 1 and 8 there on Bank, and that does not bode well for him across the board here, because looking at his stats as of right now, he was 6 and 9 to start, so make that 7 kills and, well, 17 deaths. That is not looking too hot for him, especially given the fact that, well, he had a really, really solid survival rating in his last series, but this one, definitely not as much. G2 quickly finding him and dispatching him, and the same could be said about W7m there on Bank.
So now we're going to be moving, I believe, to Kafe for map number 2 here, coming up in just a moment. So we're going to be expecting, obviously, some big changes in that regard. Mainly the fact that we've got a bit of a bigger map to be played into here for our teams as well that will demand more with regards to the coordination of things. Thankfully, defense is going to have, I think, a little bit more room to breathe here. The attackers will have a little bit more work to do as well to be able to breach through, get some access to these sites. It's not going to be as much of a problem for G2, of course, with the way we saw them playing there, but it'll be a bit of a sigh of relief for W7, and hopefully will allow them to come into this game a bit more strongly on that defensive side.
Yeah, I really think that W7m still has a really solid basis to work off of here, and I really hate to just put it on the shoulders of somebody, but I really want to see Julio kind of step up when it comes to the frag game, because if he's not there, then we're going to continue to see scorelines like this, where it's going to be like 7-4, 7-5, 7-3, just because Julio can't get much done at the current moment. He has the lowest KPR as of right now in the tournament, which is ridiculously low.
Great.
Yeah, at the start of this, it was a 0.27. At this moment in time, I would dare to say it might be around a 0.2 or less, which would be just not what you want at all from a top-tier team, especially a team that finished top 4 in Yongshiping.
We did see the stats a few moments ago. There are some players here at W7 that are still performing up to par. Volps being one of those most notably, of course, especially when you look at the entry stats there. That's one area where we've been seeing some pretty good results for W7M on the first map there. Their capability to actually get that first kill or so and establish, sort of a staging position to get themselves into a site is pretty good at the moment here, but beyond that, getting into the depths of the site, that's where we saw a few other issues. Regardless though, folks, we are moving into map number 2 now, so let's see if G2 can go for the double map back-to-back here, the 2-0 shutdown against one of their Latin American opponents, or if W7M has that fight to bring us back and send us over to Theme Park for map number 3.
Well, we have to get to the ban phase first before we get into the map, so let's do our due diligence here. It's going to be Ying out first, G2 sitting on their offensive ban, but they finally decided what they want to go with. Going to get rid of some execute utility and a little bit more utility, as we have some utility destruction coming in from Flores and more or less getting rid of, actually. So won't be seeing any of those Rotero drones. We'll have to try and deal with that around shields or anything of the sort. Solace also going to follow suit, as she'll be our first defensive ban, as we have seen time and time again, and we'll continue to see throughout the remainder of this tournament. She's just a nuisance. Very, very difficult to deal with, especially for the drone game. And then Smoke is going to be the one wrapping up our defensive bans here from W7M. And actually, funny enough, Smoke, a pretty common ban that people used to love back in the day in Brazil to try and really mix things up. It's still thrown in every once in a while from teams around the world. It's not like W7M going to be doing it here.
It's not really like the earth-shattering ban that it used to be, in my opinion, though, just because of the fact that we have a lot more operators that can do like kind of the same thing that he does. Obviously, that's done in a bit of a different way. You look at operators like Tachanka, and to some extent as well, those Goyo canisters can fulfill a similar role. But obviously, in terms of how specifically it's used, it does work a bit differently, but it still fulfills that same role of delay tactic here. So it's not going to be any huge loss for either team to not have access for the Smoke, in my opinion.
No, I completely agree with you. Smoke is still the best in the business when it comes to delay. He's got the best utility setup, especially with like deployable shield and all that.
Especially when you consider we're on Kafe too, and like the Tachanka works really well on this map, specifically for this site. Actually looking at it now too, they didn't bring it for this one obviously, but just for future reference there, this is probably one of his better maps in my opinion.
Absolutely, you can play him right there at the back of bunker and just launch, fire grenades over the top of the soft walls and prevent a lot of different plants from going down. round, so it was a very solid option. He can also play over inside of coat check as well, which is a nice counter position. The defensive side loves to play, and the offense loves to try and thwart just because of how pivotal it can be. G2 going to start working their way onto the map here of Kafe. W7m going to keep things rolling with some initial tidbits of aggression, but nothing really to call home about. Just more or less looking at things and seeing if they could potentially accomplish something.
The rest of G2 slow rolling here for the first few seconds of the round here. Already quite a few openings being made, though, for some of those hard breach positions, specifically going in towards Freezer. It's a good thing we do have Julio back on the Clash once again here, because that delay specifically over towards the garage entryway and white stairs might be very much needed with the speed of which G2 is able to clear out some of these positions. Alamal as well. Bring the gridlock into the fold here to try to add some extra blockage once we get deeper into the round itself. You can see the first of those track slingers going to be thrown down over on Whiskey stairs to prevent any rotates back up there. So sort of a flank watch position being used for that one, but as well, a second one thrown down a few seconds prior to that one too. So it looks like Alamal just trying to set up a little bit of a grid for himself and anyone else that's going to be staying up here on the second floor when the actual site execute happens.
Virtue almost getting blown sky high there as he's on the sledge work for mining as of right now. Going to attempt to spam into bunker, but not going to find too much. That's on to Doki and the rest of the gang as they're going to dispatch W7m in a pretty convincing fashion. Volps now trying to get it back in blood, and he will. Blur will end up picking up Julio, but Volps, my God, man, slowed down as he's already gotten 3, and he could actually win this round, John. Virtue and Blur both extremely low on HP, and also he's Echo. He can reposition these cameras.
Also see what he can potentially work himself towards here. Like you said, the repositioning of those Echo drones is going to be second to none here with his capability to try to win this one out. He's actually going to move both of them now to get them into a better position for when G2 feels the confidence to move forward. That does leave a little bit of a risky situation. The fact that he could have been droned out, but nicely done. Plays it off the audio cue from upstairs, catches Virtue lurking into his corner, and now he's got a health advantage for the final 1v1. Blur is at negative 20 HP here, sub 20 HP, trying to win this one out inside of the 1v1. The crossfire comes dangerously close to making the connection onto Volps. He's also out in the open here, taking the risk on exposing himself to Blur without the full intel, but keep in mind there, you can see it, his teammates on those Echo drones giving out the hard pings, constantly feeding Blur's location over to Volp, so he is not panicking in any sense right now. That all is instead happening over on Blur's side of things. Look at this as well. Nicely played by Volp. Just backs away from the scenario. Just gonna play this on the timer unless he knows he has a winning angle. There we go. An ace as well from Volps to shut it down as he single-handedly saves this round.
And that right there is the danger of a Brazilian squad. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And that's what Volps does. Dispatches the entirety of G2 single-handedly. Just had to reposition some drones to assist with the info game. That's just how dastardly of a character Echo is as well. I mean, for a long time in his existence, he needed that nerf. He was just so very good because look at what he's capable of. All simply by playing things out properly around his utility is some solid gun work with that MP5 SD. Great round there from Volps, and one we'll definitely call back on in his career.
Excellently played by Volps. He's been one of the few shining stars for W7m inside of this series here. Obviously, we just looked at his stats from map number 1 before we actually dove into this game too. He was on the forefront of all these successful plays from W7m, and once again is the singular forefront of the play for the first round here on this play here. So nicely done from Volps. Excellently worked out here for W7m to keep their composure, keep themselves centered, and more importantly, keep them in front of the charge here with a 1-0 lead over G2 to start out the map. We're moving beyond this, of course, with the site now locked down. It's going to be a reading room fireplace defense. We know that short tech pause, but I believe we're already past it, folks. So getting ourselves back into the game now to see if W7m can give us some more miracles like that.
Do you believe in the Church of Volps, Brazil? We'll have to see. Prayers up. W7m is looking to elongate this series, and it all starts with these little measures, one round at a time. Don't take huge swaths of things. Don't overthink it. One step, more than likely end up finding your exit. Exactly where you want to go. So for G2, going to be changing some things up here for their offensive perspective. Bench is going to be onto the Nook. Virtue will be providing the air jabs for some flank control. Blur also going to be providing a little bit of dislodgement utility with the firebolts, as well as some smokes to break up some lines of sight. So got everything that they necessarily need to be able to have some fun inside of this round. Volp's impacting and looking for drones really there. Didn't really find too much. Could have obviously ran out, but pretty interesting little opening there from him. KZ also going for this spawn peek, so looks like it could have just been some feint pressure over there towards Hell just to try and get them to look the other way, while KZ quickly thwarted their initial game plan.
Attacker's bomb diffuser has been dropped.
First kill of the round is going to field itself over to the w7m roster, as Herds instead is able to execute onto Blur there. Pretty big pick too when you consider all the utility, of course, that's going to be sitting in the pocket of Capital this early in the round. So all that now completely lost. Benja trying to get another one going here, trying to get at least the first kill for his team this round. Chucking in the nades, trying to scare Volps out of the position. It works to get him out of the position, just can't follow through with the spray, unfortunately. He makes it out just barely with about 20 or so HP to fight later on in the round. Benja will get hit with a bullet or so as well, but he's still in fighting shape there at around 80.
Well, so far for G2, Kafe, a pseudo Rubik's Cube for them. Not able to work it out. Looked like the first round was going to be the one that found them the most success, but we know how Volps wanted that one to play out, so he made his story known. w7m still waiting things out for G2. They're feeling as though this round not really well within their grasp just yet. Want to try and drone some things out and find some extra info on their own game that's going on around this top floor, and they will successfully do so. Herds right on the other end of this, and he's quickly going to get taken down by Doki. The spatial awareness not there for the audio apparently in that position. Very unfortunate for the w7m member, but they've still somehow been able to manage. He'll take down some G2 players, but KZ now down for the count over inside of Pixel.
Now still hunting through the soft breach panels to see if anything will be presented. The players on w7m, but not able to find them so easily. Starting into quite a chaotic scenario here for the final minute of play. Virtue finally locking down another kill, this time securing one for G2, of course. Bringing it down to Volps, who has still survived all this chaos after what he went through at the beginning of the round here. Just barely now, however, at about 20 or so HP. And Julio alongside of him, looking to step up to the plate here, where he has been struggling to do so throughout the series so far. Will this finally be the time we see him come to bear fruit for himself and the rest of his team? We'll soon find out. With only 30 seconds to go, G2 is not going to have a choice. They'll have to make the descent sooner rather than later. And indeed, they're going to be priming for that now, as Julio tries to dodge out the nade. Alamau with an opportunity there, but misses it. Allows Julio to re-transition through red 90 and then back out into pillars.
Seconds remaining.
G2, the team play working for them, but it's taken them some time to set this up. w7m, they're slowly working their way back into this round. All it takes is one proper kill and the entire thing explodes. Julio gets one, Volps gets the other. The plant has to be stuck by Alamau, and he's more than likely dead. He'll just get off of it. G2, they do their damnedest, John, to try and work together to solve this problem on the mid floor, but w7m do such a bang-up job of avoiding them entirely until the moment arises. They need to poke their head out of the cave and make their play. w7m with the round here on Kafe.
So Bank may have not necessarily seemed like the best place for w7m to try and take things here, but they are lighting themselves up here on Kafe. 2 rounds to none so far against G2 here. That's 2 sites locked down, forcing them to be fair onto their tertiary site now, which is just going to be another second floor hold for themselves as well. This is one of the maps where we do have that kind of shared site between 2 of the site selections, so it's still going to be dining room on the second floor, but of course, instead of the library, it's now going to be over here in the mining room instead on the left side of the map. Just a little bit of a defensive matrix need to be set up to properly adjust for that change up onto this side. G2, of course, is going to be bringing some different operators here as well. The flank watch coming back in onto Virtue specifically there with the Nomad. Benja bringing the Nook back into the fold. This is a very, very big map for this operator when you consider the immediate access the attackers have to those staircases and the potential sneak plays they could go for up to the 2nd or 3rd floor. So we'll see what Benja is able to lurk towards. More intel going to be gained as well through Blur on the Dokkaebi now, trying to get those phone calls out and get better positional intel as to where w7m is playing their mid and late round positions from. not going to be wasting much time for G2 either, as we see them go right for that initial first floor control. They realize that w7m probably doesn't have a whole lot built up down here, maybe a player or two watching Whiskey Scares or something like that, so they'll keep watching for that. But here we go with Benja, just like we were talking about a moment ago. He's leading the charge. Unfortunately, there's a motion detector sitting on Whiskey, and it gives him away. JV92 catches that on the audio cue, knocks him down, and it's going to be w7m with the first kill.
Big pickups here from w7m. It seems like Bank has lit a fire under them as they're quickly taking it to G2, putting them on their back foot. And it all started with Volps as he had that fire in his belly originally. And that nice ace inside of round one. This might be the play here. Oh, almost had him with the Nitro Cell. KZ tries it out on the castle barricade, but doesn't find too much. Nitro Cells and frags abound, and it's going to be the frags that win it out. Alamau to take down Herds here as he's playing both angles. Also down into Hell in the upside down Propel. Just be managing this portion of the building for some time.
They're going to go very quiet once again inside of the mid round here. Has been an often occurrence inside of this series here as both teams inside of that early round oftentimes are just trading blows against each other and then giving themselves the respect to gain intel, whether it's on the defensive or attacker side for the next minute or so after that. Volps losing a lot of HP yet again, but this is a familiar situation for him, and he's still been able to thrive inside of it, so I doubt that's going to affect him too much. G2 in the meanwhile starting to take some control down at the bottom of White to make their own ascent here as we reach the final minute of play. The nade goes in. JV92 too deep, too close to the door, however, so won't be affected by it. Another kill is found by another member of G2 as Alamau trades one out and keeps the numbers even at a 3v3.
Into the last minute now. G2 still looking for their first offensive round. Maybe the last Logic bomb out here from Blur, and Logic probably out the window as this timer continues to dwindle. They're going to have to try and throw it at the site and hope that it sticks. Virtue looking to see if there's anybody straggling around Brown Stairs that he could quickly dispatch of. Opening up the gates for G2, but he's found Volps on the other end. It was a late rotation down Red Stairs to try and come up behind G2, but the shoe was on the other foot. Blur also coming in late as well. All of this could have been potentially fatal to a W7M member, but you can see the remaining units playing close to site over inside of Train as well as Library. Alamau, the downward position, has some semblance of control over the site. This will allow them to find some area to plant, but after Virtue's gone down, they're going to need some serious cover, and the case is actually well within the right of W7M to take, and they will. After that case goes down into their control, the round is theirs as well, all in their ownership, all in their control here on Kafe.
W7M going for a tear on this map here, forcing an early timeout from G2 at arguably the earliest point they realistically could have gone for one here. A 3-0 start for W7M means that it's 3-0 on 0-3 on rounds rather for the G2 roster. They've just not been able to make anything work, especially when it comes to the mid and late round play here. Always someone from W7M able to evade them, get out of their line of sight, and be able to properly rotate around them to shut them down via a clutch or another method here. So it is creating a very tough situation for G2 to properly work themselves around, and as a result of that has led to this very definitive scoreline for W7M, currently leading 3-0.
Probably a lot to be said from Fabian here. G2 getting a lot done with their openings. There's definitely a chance for them to win these rounds, but W7M are a lot more lethal, a lot more willing to go the extra mile in a few of these situations, whether it be through aggression or just some awkward situations they're throwing at G2. It's working, and that's really what they need to try and game plan around right now. They got to kind of try and work the monkey back into the cage and see if they can try and put a containment around W7M, make it to where they can't be as wily coyote as they want to be.
We're going to see the Frostbats come back out here for the W7M roster as well. This has been a very chaotic late round, oftentimes coming down to just 2 to 3 players, or maybe even less than that. So the Frostbats actually probably have a pretty good chance of finding some effective kills if our evidence from yesterday's games is any credence to that. Away from that, however, G2, a few repicks going to be showing up. For the most part, it is just repositioning a few operators and some very slight change-ups to the roster, so nothing earth-shattering here. We're going to see a Lion finally get swapped in, though, and everything is locked in. It'll be on Doki as well, so going to be trying to play a little bit more into that intel game, trying to lock down these defenders as well. Very much W7M looking to do the same thing with those Frostbats, so let's see those utility switch-ups ends up being a more effective trade here as the members of G2 once again begin to approach the Kafe.
On G2, going to be bringing a few extra pieces to this puzzle, especially with Doki working in onto the Lion. Really love this operator choice here. Fantastic for slowing down, you know, some high-flying plays from the defense, except for things like that. That's pretty immediate, so not really going to be able to help out Virtue on that one. But W7M are manning every single window, every angle possible to try and take it to G2, and it is working flawlessly as of now.
Benja has to be careful here stepping forward. You just saw it a moment ago, the W7M member watching through the drone hole to potentially catch the feet of Benja or anyone else from G2 that tries to lurk past this. Benja, though, has his own plans. He's already worked his way all the way to the top of Whiskey. They try to play through Red 90 here. Members of W7M are in the area, but are they expecting this specific play to unfold here? Takes out the default. More alert members of W7M would have caught that, and indeed they do. The drone's working their way down through White as well. Also going to reveal the positions of the members from W7M. So neither player has security inside of that fight, but W7M gets scared first. They'll back away. They'll give the room over to G2, and that includes the hatch drop along with it here. So G2 now primed for the execute, but still down a player as they've been unable to make up for the loss of Virtue earlier on in the round.
Round slowing down now. I believe that might have been the clone there from Yana. No, actually, that was the real one. Alamount sprinting over into mining. He's going to stay alive. Blur will be over here as well. And unfortunately enough, the Nitro cell is going to be way off the mark over inside of the red hallway. Not even going to deal a sliver's worth of HP to Blur. So this is going to allow G2 to really start putting, you know, the iron to W7M and making a lot of these positions pretty difficult to play. Benja and the rest of the gang working their way down now down to Whiskey here. Need to get rid of some of these castle barricades and open up some lines of sight to be able to assist themselves.
G2 continuing to put the pressure on, but once again continuing to run out of time in the process. This has oftentimes been an issue for them, especially when they fall behind with the deficit here. And now they're just going to force the hand. Blur going directly into Freezer with the skeleton key. Takes on a fight versus Julio. Gets some intel about a player to his left and then clips the head off as well. Beautifully done, but the Frostmat strike again, ladies and gentlemen, as G2 still, though, are going to be unscathed by it as they move forward, even bringing that player back from the depths as well. All down to Herds now. He's traded out for one, but he still has 3 more players to knock out and the plant to prevent, which unfortunately won't be able to do. Alamau successfully gets it down onto the ground just as Herds approaches the main kitchen doorway. Does he have what it takes to go for this swing here? These angles are going to be so tight, and more than likely he's going to have to face off against multiple players at once. It's a nigh impossible clutch for Herds, but he's got to bring it out now, otherwise G2 finally will get themselves around on the board, and indeed they shall at the hands of Alamau, claiming the final kill.
A round that was W7M's until Blur and Alamau showed up and decided to quickly sweep it under the rug. That was extremely well done from both of them, especially playing around the Gemini clone from Alamau there, able to get the info from the Valkyrie, playing over behind Bunker. So very well done. That's going to be their very first offensive round, even past the big pickup there from W7M, which has been usually the big spark that they've needed to pick up rounds like this. So very well done from G2 to fight back from a downward position.
W7M, of course, still in front of the situation, still in charge here, but G2 now finally has their feet on the ground. And we'll look to try and deploy that a little bit further, of course, with another successful few pickups of their own. W7M now just rotating through the already picked up sites that they have now unlocked for themselves. Not going to go for the reattempt of the first floor hold. Just back over here into Library. Once again, things went swimmingly on the first attempt here. Going to hope the G2's adaptation to the second run here is not as effective as the adaptation they made for Kitchen. And that they can hopefully still be able to control things here. Some interesting operator picks from W7M as well. The Legion specifically coming out for Julio there just to add that extra bit of intel and trap play to maybe either slow down G2 or, of course, give the sound intel over to W7M when G2 are finally ready to make the push. Aside from that, though, no real surprises here when it comes to at least our defensive operator picks, and for the most part, you can say the same thing for G2s as well. Dokido picking the IQ, an operator that we don't tend to see all that often anymore, but may find itself useful in this situation here.
Well, G2 worried about the potential of a roam game here from W7M, and I can't necessarily blame them. Blur are going to be working in onto the logic bombs for that case, as well as the air jabs from Virtue to try and lock up some of the pathing W7M could use to the fullest and try and get some of these big kills here. And the first one's going to come from KZ, actually, as he'll take down Alamau. Looks like it was a longer angle, maybe down the hallway, so he'll get a big kill. Hers will take quite a bit of damage on the other end of things, though, as well as Virtue. Looks like a potential player going pretty high flying there for just a moment, but able to work it out. Herds, back and forth we go here inside of Christmas on the ticket position. This is one that we don't see played too often, but if it's supported correctly, it can be extremely annoying, and you see exactly why.
Drop in through top red has been made by G2. Now the clearance of the second floor can truly begin, but some business needs to be taken care of on the third floor. First, of course, still quite a bit of a presence deployed here by W7M. Just inside of Cigar alone, you've got KZ with a whole horde of Kiba barriers blocking the way. He's not the only one. Still all 5 up and running here for W7M, while G2 is already down 2 of their players. Man, Benja just cannot get away with anything here on the Nook as well. Another motion detector goes off as he tries to sneak in through Heldor. I actually think he might have gotten away with that one, at least in the form of the fact that no one's going to immediately chase him down, but he can't do the same for Virtue, who tries to go for the skylight hop. It's beaten out by JV92 here. Volps into the hallway finds Benja, more than likely playing off of that sound cue from earlier on in the round. Leaving just Blur in the equation here now with a 1v5 set before him. The guy is literally not moving at the moment, so I'm just going to let the team chat about this one a bit. Try to use this time as effectively as possible, as all he can really do at this point is bait for some stat pads, and unfortunately won't even be able to get that one. It's a flawless round from W7M as they quickly retake control of the scenario here at 4-1.
Very well done from them. Flawless round from W7M as Kafe well within their control from this position. 4-1 at the current moment and going back downstairs to kitchen. Actually, they're second guessing it. Looks like they want to go up to bar cocktail instead. Either way you slice it, still going to be probably a pretty positive round for W7M, especially given how Volps has been playing so far on this map. It looks to be his domain as he is constantly taking it to the opposition. Currently 2-2, but expect to see a little bit more out of him here. So G2 still have the ability to pick up one round and give themselves a little bit of a cushion for their defensive side. Once this switches up, you definitely do not want to be going into this half 5-1.
Certainly you do not. Well, yes, it's a defensive-sided map. It's not that defensively sided. So G2 need to see something from them here. Otherwise, map 3, for me at least, is going to be all but a certainty if we go into the second half with that much of a deficit into W7M's favor. Alamau with a nice little last-second switch up here, too, is going to add the Glaz into the equation. This combined as well with the fact that we also have the Capital picked up could make for a very nasty formula for the players on W7M to deal with. However, we have seen so many different teams attempt this Glaz setup, and I will be real with you, it very rarely pays off. So let's see if G2 can make a mincemeat of my prediction.
Oh, Volts. It's gone hunting along with Herds. I've been able to find the Herd, though. G2, they've worked their way up the black top side instead. Nobody really home for what they were initially considering. Alamau, don't get too trigger happy now. We've already seen you kill a couple of people on your team, but don't need that going down with Glaz this time around. That would be potentially the worst thing to do with that op. Not only are you killing one of your teammates, but you're also giving up the goods in regards to what op you're using. So looks like we're gonna have some frag grenades dedicated in here. Alamau's gonna have those on himself as well. And also, by the way, Blur the only one with smokes in this scenario. So Blur, or this weight in gold past obviously just staying alive and being a man to plant, really needs to get those smokes down to be able to suss Alamau and what his operator is completely, you know, capable of doing and, well, should be doing.
Members of G2 ready to move in, however, it is not going. Alamau ends up taking himself down with his own pre-cooked frag grenade as he swings in. Such an unfortunate chain of events that it pretty much is the beginning of the end for this round here. Virtue, now the last player standing, and again, not even inside the building yet. So what can he possibly achieve here in the 1v3? Case is still down, and someone got taken out through Skylight as well. G2 just cannot make these attacks work here on Kafe as W7M continue to slap them down time after time again.
Nobody burnt the heaven window. That was the biggest issue. Nobody threw any utility through there. He threw one grenade and then tried to swing on in, and just so happened to be that there was a my disc at the bottom of that window. And the timing worked out perfectly for him to blow himself up as the my disc detonated the frag grenade. G2 losing off the back of that, as obviously that was the crux of their execution. That smoke play there to kill out the players inside of Cocktail, but none of it really boding too well for them. So now Virtue, more than likely just going to try and play this out, delay some time here. They're more than likely already considering what's going on defense.
Yep, once again, same as the last round here. Nothing that realistically can be achieved from the 1v3 perspective. Just for the player still alive, just have some fun. Basically play a DM for 30 seconds and let your teammates talk it out while you try to waste as much time as possible here. So not the best half, of course, for G2, given what we had seen occur just back on the last map. Now we'll have to see a massive rebound here. Basically a perfect scoreline for w7m. There we go, Virtue finally going to get picked off here as w7m is able to lock him down over on attacker side balcony. And that will seal the deal for what could very well be the beginning of the end for this map as well. At 5-1 here, w7m, just 2 successful attacks are all that is going to be needed.
So far, a struggle bus for G2 when it comes to Kafe, and I think that right there, the icing on the presumable cake that Kafe is shaped in for G2. Alamau getting blown up from that frag grenade yet again, and the remaining members of G2 really not having anything to do with this game. Doki completely silent, Blur having a couple of moments here or there, but it's really just nothing to call home about just yet. From the first map into now, you can clearly see that w7m have a different caliber of play, at least on defense, in comparison to G2's offense on this map.
It's going to be that kitchen start for G2. Once again, the very same foundation that we saw deployed by w7m at the beginning of the first half. Also, a bit of a different flair, though, in terms of the operators that are going to be used here by G2 compared to w7m. w7m wanting to play the bunker quite heavily with things like Goyo canisters and Echo in the first round, whereas G2 seems a little bit more free-flowing with their capability, wanting to extend their presence a bit more, whether that's going to be horizontally or vertically. More so often ending up to be a horizontal extension on this site, but we do see teams try to play up every once in a while as well here. When you look at operators, of course, like the Lesion and the Aruni that have been added into the equation for the first go on their defense.
w7m quite considered, or concerned rather, with what is going on around the window play from G2. We know w7m occupying a lot of these different angles in the early round for their defenses, but it doesn't seem to be the same for G2. They want to keep this one a little bit closer to sight, especially since it is on the base level. Makes it a little bit easier if you want to play some areas like Bakery or Coat Check, and that seems to be G2's game plan for now. Nothing really going on the mid or top floor, so that should be easy pickings for w7m if they so choose to go that avenue.
This is a very late reinforcement coming in here now as well to try and pepper back up the wall. Will end up working out. w7m actually not able to grab the Azami before she slams the wall back up there right into the face of these attackers here. But at the same time, that wall is going to be dealt with just as quickly as it was put up. Selma already on top of it. Impact to go through to attempt to stop the second one from breaching. I believe it was a success there, but at the same time, the Kiba barricade is going to be quickly dealt with. Doki's in a bit of an awkward position here now, having proned under that barbecue there. The second he goes up, he's immediately clipped off by Herds. And once more, w7m have put the right foot forward here to claim the opening kill of the round. G2 is attempting to work towards a flank, but you can see they're not entirely sure of that position here as they try to swing out towards it, over towards Coat Check, and don't really find any presence from w7m that they can action upon just yet.
That's the biggest issue. This might be the hardest part of the entire map to flank because there's no real way to get in behind them. You just have to take the gunfight. You're taking a gunfight via the kitchen wall or the hallway, but either way, it is working out for G2 when it comes to the competition. Finally, an equalizer will come through for Herds. And into the last minute, it's going to be a 3 versus 3. G2 still have a pulse, still have a sign of life. Alamau using that mid floor to the fullest advantage. Julio actually going to die, or rather Virtue dying to Julio via that Claymore. It's going to make things a little bit more complex for them now. w7m pulling ahead, all with that patient play. Benjo will also get one back onto his shoulders though as well. A little pre-fire here, but this timer is starting to eat at their sides. Alamau has one impact grenade, one hope, one shot, one chance to try and stop this plant from going down. They have the cross dedicated. What happens to this player in Freezer? What say he in his defense? Volps will go down in a flick! Benja does it again! Oh my! On a dime inside of Freezer, quickly taking down both w7m members. And what a round there from Benja Master.
Benjamaster on absolute fire today with his spray control. That time on the SMG-11, I believe, as well. They're one of the more difficult ones to try and get a multi-kill inside of that single clip, but he gets the job done anyway. Very well played out by the G2 Esports roster here to put their foot down yet again as the second half gets started. More importantly, put some fear into w7m as they seem to be on a rampage prior to this previous round here. Now, we'll have to see if they'll slow things down, try to play things a bit more composed, giving that greater respect over to G2, which in turn could lead to more success for them and a potential comeback to reignite this map a bit more and maybe still keep the hopes of a 2-0 alive.
Now, Volp's got his, and now Benji has gotten his comeuppance as w7m Revenge Tour on for G2, now up against him. They're trying to get back some of these rounds they lost on their offensive side. Gonna send it up top into Bar and Cocktail in a fairly straightforward affair from the defensive perspective, especially given the operator lineup, just trying to slow down w7m, give them some hard looks, whether it be via laser gates or some of those Kiba barriers. But yeah, that's mostly it, just trying to make it a little bit difficult for w7m to process that top floor and give some advantage over to G2 in these gunfights as well as the time.
KZ and the rest of G2 back out, ready to play yet again here. So we see w7m start to move forward, start to establish those positions upstairs here. We're going to see G2 skip one of the steps that w7m decided to take here earlier on in their half, of course, and a potential lineup early on. Now you see that window pop open, and a member of G2 forced to scurry away. Does not want to involve themselves in this position for an extended battle, however. So that's going to be Blur that initially got spotted out, or potentially could have been spotted out from behind that window. Now ends up rotating over towards White to avoid the situation entirely. Benja as well, ready to potentially fend off some of this repel pressure working itself into Cigar. He'll sit back here, currently alone as well, so this is a very precarious situation, but correct myself, Alamau somewhat nearby. Oh, that's a big peek right there, but Alamau making things work regardless. He lines up a second repelled kill now against JV92. Virtue also getting into this heat. I don't believe anyone from w7m has actually entered the building yet here as well. Only just now starting to see them take these hatch drops, and immediately they are faltering. The case along with them has now gone down to the ground there by New Hatch. Worst case scenario for w7m has been deployed. Alamau even picking one up with the M590 here. Volps is all that remains. He gets one pad kill, and aside from this though, the round is pretty much over. He has to drop in, and the second he does, there's going to be a member of G2 waiting for him.
Yeah, and that member happens to just be named Alamau as he is awaiting the drop with that shotgun. Doesn't seem like there's going to be too much that happens for Volps here though, as the sledge is going back down the side of the building. Probably more than likely just going to try and delay some time and allow w7m to use this clock to its fullest advantage, trying to figure out what they want to do for the remaining rounds. They have a lot of opportunities to try and close out this map, so a long road still ahead for G2, a much shorter path considered for w7m, but that doesn't mean that G2 can't get this done. w7m, see if they can potentially get a push here. Finally, it'll be Benja to seal the deal, drops down the hatch into the red hallway, and G2 will shore up this score line 5-3.
G2 starting.
Yes, you did, Doki. You did peek a hatch in a 5v1. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And he immediately died as well, but I still love the, I respect it. Honest to God, I probably would have done the same thing. It was like, why not? Why not? But to be fair, if you do that with like your friends in ranked, that right there is just the first domino and you losing the round. Because you no longer have a say in what happens. You're just like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm sure everybody will figure out. There's 4 people alive. And then that first round from Volts happens. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe next time I won't go peek the hatch.
G2 on a bit of a comeback run here now. 2 rounds to go to equalize this at 5-2 all. Back down onto the second floor after they have found success on both their first floor kitchen hold and the third floor cocktail hold over in the library here now to see if they can complete the full set, go for the full run, where they only need one more after that one to tie things up. Doing a fantastic job of keeping up pace here with w7m, showing us a very defended-sided map. Just a drastic comparison to what we had back over on Bank, of course, where aside from G2, things were very, very attacker-sided throughout the course of that play on there, where G2, of course, would eventually take it because of their dominance on both sides.
It's going to be a mirror strategy here for G2 inside of the bathroom, alongside some castle barricades and a few traps, as well as some mute jammers. locking up that top floor, making it a little complex for w7m to try and work their way through. Don't have the best hard breach options here. In fact, the only hard breach that they do have happens to be on Julio and Capital. So more than likely not going to be able to deal with the mirror windows all that well, minus using the tactical bolts out of him. There's no real hard breach advantage that they have coming into this, like a Habana or maybe an Ace.
KZ, of course, just doing the usual hatch work upstairs. Nothing too fantastic to write home about here. Both teams locked in position, waiting for the execute to follow through right now. Things will remain quiet as long as that is the case, as long as w7m does not have the full confidence to swing themselves into it here. KZ getting that slight peek at Benja. His like elbow popping out there. He's able to get a few shots off onto it. Is given the opportunity to do so again, but it's caught in the midst of a nade toss, so can't follow it through this time. Benja escapes into a different part of the map here, and still no kills have been found. Nades go in though, and there we go. Great bank from Herds to pick one up. But look at Alamau hiding below the windowsill. Nearly gets the revenge against Herds. Thankfully, he quickly repels away from that one and saves his own life for now.
So very close. All of these players trying to abuse every angle in the books. You can see two players trying to use the drone hole on white top side and get this kill. Herds might actually end up getting this with the frag grenade if he backs up, but he will not. Fortunate for Virtue there, as he more than likely had no idea that was quickly going to be an unplayable position. Speaking of unplayable, has to be unplayable or feel unplayable up against Alamau right now, as he's surely hit his stride, John. 12 and 4. The second kill for him, first kill inside of this, as he just dealt that considerable damage to Herds earlier in the round.
Herds still waiting on the outskirts of Heldor to see if anything will present itself from G2. G2 has gone all but silent here now, as we've entered the final minute of play. They do not need to give anything away, so they will not be even attempting to, as w7m seems to be frozen up once again on this attacking lineup as well. We've seen this in previous rounds, where they're just not able to get enough of a utility spread out, or not able to take the appropriate position, and just end up going for a few guess pushes, which will end up leading to their deaths. This time, though, it's a bit more well-formulated. Volps and Julio able to deal with the upstairs presence. G2 never peeling that back. Virtue stealing one back on the exchange, though, as he finally gets the finisher off onto Herds. Volps will get hit from some utility, and Blur gets away with one, but he can't escape fully. The trade comes in. Everything falls to Virtue, but time now plays into his favor. The scope, though, is not going to play into his favor at all inside of that angle. Julio, I believe, shuts it down for w7m, and they have finally thrusted themselves onto map point.
Looking much better that time around. Not nearly as strong of a showing into the later portion of that from G2, as w7m finally able to get the best of them and make this a much more difficult scoreline to look at from their perspective. 6-3, G2 needing a perfect rotation of sites. Definitely doable on a map like Kafe, but they cannot have a singular mistake, and we saw just how easily w7m can trip up G2 throughout this series so far. Quite a few of these players able to get around G2 in a myriad of different circumstances.
So, do or die time here for G2 now, as it has to be all perfect from this point forward. w7m, thankfully able to rely on their earlier successes in the game, have not fallen victim to the early half play from G2 just yet here. Still could end up in that position, though, as G2 gave us some very convincing rounds earlier on. Their defensive half, they can now rotate back into those very same sites, starting out here with Kitchen, of course. It's time to see if they are ready to test their mettle and work their way back up to that 6th round here in terms of operator selections. Nothing hugely surprising going to be coming up from either team here. Very much an expected fare for this map. Blur immediately going to work for G2, though, shutting down JV92 and all the flank watch that would have come from the Nomad with it.
Hard look there for w7m initially, but doesn't mean that they can't do something with this round. We saw a very similar start the last time, and they were still able to win it out. But G2 definitely not wanting this one to slip through the cracks. It really looks like they want to try and solve this problem and get it done here on Kafe. Do not want to head off to Theme Park for that 3rd map. But since that pickup of JV92 as well as KZ, it is dead stopped w7m. They're all just looking for these rotations now to see if they can potentially pick up an easy kill, initially looking in towards Doki there in Bakery.
I'm reloading!
w7m continuing to
Shiba deployed. Surface
look for options here to try and make up the deficit, trying to see if they can scout out any lone members of G2 that may be vulnerable or unsupported in any way, shape, or fashion they can use to slowly slingshot their way back into the round. Things not panning out, though, as they attempt to go for a bit of a play inside of Christmas. Will not work out. Blur ends up getting hit slightly, but now you're going to see the nades bounce back onto Volps. Downs him entirely. Not out for the count yet, but Herds is as he tries to go for another nade toss. And wow, G2 just snapped the jaw shut right there as well as soon as the nade kill comes through, and make sure that w7m have zero chance to fight back there in the late round. Entering round 11 here, where G2 just have 2 to go now.
Virtue was so locked in that he didn't even see Fabian's hand in his peripheral vision. Fabian had to start waving. He was like, hello, can you see me? Hey, good job, man. Good round. Yeah, all right. Well, you got to feel for him as well. I understand Virtue's position there. You know, you got 2 rounds to go. You're trying to force overtime here. We got to work, boss, okay? I got things to do, people to see, people to shoot. And, well, there's more shooting to be done here in about 40 seconds. We've got a lot more boring kill time, or time to kill, rather, here for the remainder of this prep phase. But G2, very quick to light a fire there, you know, when it considered round 10, and taking that pretty handedly off the back of their efforts. So transitioning that over into this, what will w7m switch up? It looks like they want to try and provide more flank utility coming into this, making it to where G2 can't get nearly as aggressive on a lot of different routes, whether it be via air jabs that they'll more than likely put on quite a few door frames, or have some of those track stingers where they'll have to give up a piece of utility or potentially shoot themselves a path through on the stairwell. But actually, it looks like the gridlock not going to work her way in. Instead, Julia's going to switch off and go over to Habana instead at the very last moment. So excommunicate that. It'll just be the Nomad that we've been seeing time and time again from both of these squads.
You already have the Nomad, which is like a better version of Gridlock's flank watch anyway, and I think Gridlock is more so used for interior site reinforcement more than anything.
Stairwells.
Yeah,
that's
stairwells.
her. If you want to know what Gridlock does, stairs, and she does them pretty damn well. So, yeah.
All right, well, let's see here. w7m, like I said, not bringing her to the table. Still going to have flank watch, though, in the form of the Nomad. And alongside of that, still getting plenty of intel from KZ's pick over onto the Lion there, too. Just trying to spam that one out, especially considering the site that we are going to be playing onto. G2 members might be pretty mobile here, so wanting to try and catch them out in the midst of those rotations and punish them, if at all possible. Might be quite difficult to do so, of course, considering the very angle-focused nature of this map from the attacker's perspective from time to time, but we'll have to wait and see what can potentially bear fruit. Herds sees the opening inside of Cigar, so we'll swing in and take that for the team. The rest of w7m should be able to form themselves up on the 3rd floor relatively soon and begin the process of clearing out the hold from G2 here.
All things considered, pretty interesting that neither one of these teams has actually dealt any damage to each other, and we're halfway through this round. It has been hotly contested in the first minute and a half from both of these squads, but now w7m is crunch time. They know it's only 1 round away, and as long as they play their game, they stick to the strategy, they'll more than likely end up on the winning end of this map. And then they can more than likely win out this best of 3 as well on Theme Park. Herds looking to see if bathroom will be clear, and it will. G2 a little farther back inside of the hidey hole of the top floor, more towards the freezer space. Benja also going to have a Nitro Cell primed here, but the wrap now coming from w7m, trying to apply some pressure on the white stairs. And they're actually going to end up working this one out. KZ will go down, nice Nitro Cell, will take out another, and it's also going to kill Blur. Virtue, anybody on G2 just really willing to put their teammates down as martyrs and just try and win out the round via that. Blur a little bit too close to the explosion, and apparently not wearing his PPE, so he will definitely get blown sky high, although G2 still well within the right to take the round.
So everything falls down now to the final 3 members of w7m to attempt to swing their way into it, as Benja is forced back into the depths of libraries. He's immediately flashed out. w7m trying to take that hell control for themselves. 20 seconds to make this work for w7m as well. So they are quickly running out of both room and timing to make this one work. Alamal begins the crunch. Julio tries to open it back up a little bit here with the push into library. Second angle going to work its way into this, but it's not enough. G2 still shutting it down, and they'll take us to the final round of regulation.
Very well done from G2. The cadence out of them. respecting W7M's pacing, not trying to push it to its fullest, you know, not jacking the accelerator through the floor and just trying to pull around out of their hat. Instead, laying back on the strategy, using these lineups and their teamwork to their fullest advantage to be able to take down W7M. It's looking pretty good for them at the current moment, but the same can't be said for W7M. That's 2 rounds in a row now that have looked a little troublesome, and this could be the moment that G2 is able to finally break them. If they force this to overtime, we are going to need to see a new level of resilience out of W7M.
Absolutely the case. That's been the problem here for W7M's. Once more, they just have not had that capability to hold on outside of the defensive half that we saw them play out at the beginning of this map, where the map advantage played heavily into their favor. They had momentum rolling, but it seems that momentum has all but entirely collapsed against them here. So we will have to wait and see if they can bring it back, if they can muster something. This is their last chance to end it. Keep in mind, folks, they started this half at 5-1 in their favor, and G2, very impressively, has brought it all the way back now, adding 4 more rounds themselves and about to add the 5th if they can win out this last defense upstairs on the 3rd floor.
All right, well, G2 1 round away from overtime, and as you said, John, it's all going down on this top floor. We either have OT or we're going to a break, and we're headed to Theme Park. That's all that is in the cards for us, and that makes things pretty exciting, especially with some of the different op choices that we're getting here on W7M. We have the Twitch in for Julio. Going to be interesting to see if he is running the F2. I haven't seen it yet this tournament. Herds is going to be on the, I almost said Amaru there. Oh my gosh. Why am I blanking on this one's name? Is it a Rooney? It's not a Rooney.
Wait, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about what Herd's playing.
Oh,
Yana. Yeah. I was blanking there for a split.
I had to find Herds on the
I was like, what are you talking about? That's not a Rooney. No.
Well, there is a Rooney. I thought you were talking about it.
Yes.
That's the one I get confused on usually, is a Rooney and a Mario.
The AR names in rank.
Yeah, there's a couple of them now.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, indeed, Yana working its way in here for Herds. Also has that info game as well. And KZ was having a little bit of a more interesting choice there for a split second, but he'll work his way back over to the Sledge, which even though Sledge did end up getting a little nerf inside of the 3 armor change that he has gotten, he's still as important as ever. He's really the one that can accomplish his job the best when it comes to working angles from a downward position through soft breach.
Well, W7M, it has all come down to this final push into the 3rd floor. Can you seal the deal? Can you overwhelm the Matrix from G2? At the moment, things are remaining quite quiet, and they often have been for that first minute or two. Just a lot of walls being shot at more than anything going on across the map right now. We do confirm the Rooney's position from Virtue there, a little bit deeper into Cocktail, so we'll have confirmation of that when they are ready to make the push forward, and may even be able to try and throw some bolts over in Virtue's way. That is the current intention. Virtue just blind as a bat, unfortunately, as that nade rolls in. The flash, I think, still fully affecting him, and nowhere to really go, even if he wanted to try and move from that position. So Virtue just had to sit there and unfortunately take the L on this round, as W7M decided to commit a good half their utility to it. Now the hop has come forward from Volps, however. He'll take the leap on his own, trying to go for a plant behind it as well. KZ so far supporting it well, but Benja trades out that repelled position. Volps, though, still able to successfully sneak off the plant, and now back out the window where we're going to see these repelled positions supported. Alamau is the only one left from G2, and W7M are sending us to a map 3.
What a round there from W7M. Quickly able to deal with the cocktail positions of G2. Breaking down everything on that top floor. And luckily enough, folks, speaking of breaking things, we're going to send you guys to a quick break so that we can get into this last map as quickly as possible. We'll see you in a minute.
I'm Nicholas Mortensen, but you know me as Pingu. I'm a 2-time Rainbow Six Siege World Champion and former top Rainbow Six Siege player in Pro League. Welcome to my Siege Ranked Bootcamp. We're talking 20 seconds left on the clock, you got the diffuser in hand, what do? Play the way that you're comfortable with, because you have confidence when you're in this position. That is when you're gonna be at your very best. Good luck.
once again, ladies and gentlemen. We are live once more, getting ready to head into map number 3 of this series between W7M and G2 Esports. G2, of course, nearly able to bring themselves back on map number 2 to win it 2 outright, but W7M held strong after a 5-1 start here on Kafe and was able to just barely close things out on the very final round of regulation, 7-5 being the final score. You can see the stats, everyone on W7M able to step up to the plate a little bit more this time. Julio specifically, of course, major improvement from like the 1-7 or 1-8 he had back on map number 1. There we see him contributing much more heavily this time. KZ did fall off a little bit though, but still didn't matter too much when the rest of the team was there to support him. For G2 though, it was really the Alamau story, I think, throughout most of the game for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it was mostly Alamau against the world in this one. We had a couple of tidbits of, G2 stepping up in some highlight moments, but past that, W7M was definitely getting the better of them in a lot of different ways. I mean, we saw it a lot from their defensive end where they were really able to put their foot on the gas and take it to G2. This actually being one of the rounds that was pretty hard fought there, but time and time again, it just seemed that W7M had the cutting edge strat or cutting edge play available to them to be able to get one over on G2. Now, it was hotly contested, as you can tell from the score line, but still, W7M able to take that one step further and push us on to map 3.
3 going to be quite the interesting affair too as we go over towards Theme Park now. The early round has oftentimes dictated a lot of the success or failure for these teams as we evolve later on into it, and it's really going to double down on that point for me into Theme Park specifically just because of the accentuation of the roam game that we get on this map. So much open area for those defenders to abuse against the attackers in that first minute or two, and pretty much every single site you play into as well. Throne, to some extent, being the really only exception to that one, and even Throne, you need to extend out to really play it appropriately too, so it is very pervasive across the entire map, and this means these teams need to double down on those strategies for the early round and make sure that they are locked in and successful. Otherwise, they could find themselves in an unwinnable position fighting for the site when it comes down to it.
Yes, indeed. Theme Park tending to be quite the defensive favored map, and one that a lot of teams really enjoy playing from that point of view. From the offensive perspective, not nearly as fun. A lot of angles to worry about, a lot of team play required to work Theme Park correctly. You just take one little step too far, then you're more than likely going to get pretty severely punished for that. And it could be the ending of the round for you and the remaining members of your team. So we'll have to see what both of these squads can do. Can't remember off the top of my head. I know production told us who was playing on defense. I do believe it's G2 Esports as I'm looking down.
Correct,
now.
yeah.
Indeed, yeah. So G2 will be starting us off on defense. So definitely have the better starting position, but it's not about where you start, isn't it? It's about where you finish. So we'll see what they can do with that. And, well, we'll see what we can do here for the remainder of this map. We are just moments away, folks, from jumping into Theme Park here with W7M up against G2 Esports.
Just waiting on the ready-ups to come in from our players, which should just be moments away, and then we can finally move into this series and see who indeed will be able to top this one out, claim a lion's share of points. W7M, of course, once again, still looking to prove themselves here as one of the greater teams in Latin America, so a big legacy on the line for them throughout the course of this group stage. Of course, here they've already proven themselves multiple times at previous majors, but as far as an SI is concerned, still trying to push themselves forward that a little bit further to join the ranks of the legacy Latin American teams, the Titans, if you will. Rosters like Liquid, FaZe, which have been around for years now. W7M wants to be in that upper echelon as well, and I think they are very, very close, in my opinion, to breaching into that category if they're not there already. Let's head into it, ladies and gentlemen. Theme Park is the final map of the series. Will it be G2 or W7M? So we're going to find out over the next 45 minutes or so.
Well, let's get into it. It's going to be G2 to ban things out first. And actually, I don't think we're going to get to the ban because we have to rehost. So now I'm going to get the initial ban, John. We have no idea what they're going to do here for Theme Park.
So just give us a moment, folks, and we'll quickly reroute ourselves over into another rehost and get ourselves back into the game. Should just take a minute or two. Like we said, we didn't actually really start the game. We didn't do bans or anything, so it's just create a new lobby, re-invite everybody to the lobby, and start the game. Pretty much is all we really have to do here. So hopefully it's going to take a second or two. I think we just had like an audio bug or something like that. So Just a quick fix for us, folks. Sorry once again.
Yeah, we didn't let anybody run to the kitchen. Nobody ran downstairs to get a drink or anything, so we're
like
fine.
Emergency bathroom break. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
At least we hope.
Yeah,
We technically haven't started the game yet, so.
That's what always happens.
One of the players could pull that out on us here in like 10 seconds.
Then it perpetuates itself, right? That's how it always goes with the stack. One of your friends leaves, and then he comes back, and then somebody else is gone, and then
Someone else gonna go for like a smoke break.
Exactly. It's just like, oh my gosh, man. Like, please. We were trying to start this lobby 25 minutes ago. I'm falling asleep in my chair. Like.
It's like trying to get a raid together in a MMO
Oh my
nowadays.
gosh.
It was really easy to get 25 people back in like 2005. Nowadays, good luck.
Oh, dude, thank God for Destiny. You need 6 people. I can manage 6 people. Like, that's not even hard, you know? I could never imagine being a WoW player and doing stuff like that. Like, first of all, nerds. Second of all, I mean, that is just way too many things going on at once. I will say, though, I did play a decent amount of Final Fantasy XIV. But, I mean, hey, you know, it's the better MMO.
Anyway, as we get ourselves back into the conversation of the matchup here, just waiting on, I think, one more member of W7M to rejoin as we're working on fixing up their PC real quick. G2 Esports, of course, primed and ready to go themselves, but it's W7M that needs to brace themselves for this as we get ready to move into Theme Park here. The defensive side of things here is not necessarily too favored towards G2 more than anything else. We've been seeing them perform quite nicely on both sides, whereas for W7M, they've relied quite heavily on their defensive end of their play to be able to pick up the large majority of their rounds. They're immediately going to be tested as we get ourselves into this third and final map here, as they'll be starting out, of course, on that attacking side. So players like Julio and whatnot going to be immediately thrown at the wall here, and we'll have to perform up to snuff if we want to see a solid foundation built up by W7M at the beginning of this map. Speaking of which, you can probably hear that in the background. I think we're going live. Let's hope it sticks together this time and we can get things started with the third and final map.
Put a little duct tape around that server. We'll get it going here. This theme park roll through. Yeah. Put it in the freezer. That's what my dad always used to do. He used to unplug the PlayStation 1 when it would overheat and just drop it in the freezer for a couple hours. Yeah.
Fun fact, Microsoft has like a bunch of servers like sitting under the Arctic Ocean right now.
That's actually super bad.
They were doing some tests like 5 or 10 years ago to like does this work? And apparently it did. So.
I know they had that one that they sunk underneath, I think the Atlantic, right? That was like in the middle of the ocean.
I think that's what it is.
Oh, was it? I didn't know that was under the ice. That's actually so sick. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I mean, the more you know. And, well, the more we know about these bands, we'll know about Theme Park. And it looks like we're going to have the Monty band coming through. A lot of Monty getting banned out from the offensive side throughout this tournament so far. A lot of people respecting what Monty brings to the table, which is just that pure, unadulterated pressure. It's so hard to try and play around him, especially when he can prevent you from, you know, exactly getting to the planter or maybe using a door that you so wanted to, you know, try and abuse prior. Monty just so good in positions like that, especially on maps like this or maps like Skyscraper, you know, things along those lines. Ying and Valkyrie also going to be banned out, and also Capitao, which is an Kaid, which is an interesting one as well, because we didn't have a Thatcher ban on the offensive side, so just worried about potentially being able to use those Electro Claws from, you know, distance inside of Armory, which we see time and time again as people try to Electro Claw shuffle those things from a pretty considerable distance nowadays, trying to, you know, play off a cover.
So for lab and storage, that'll be the starting point for both of our teams here as G2 heads downstairs. Not necessarily the expected opening site, as we'd seen this get played out yesterday, and both teams, of course, immediately went towards Throne Room. That is the expected site we assume most teams will play into, and of course, G2 will eventually work their way over there, but they do want to test their mettle a little bit, it seems, extend their own rotation game out a bit further here, try to get in the face of W7M right from the get-go, shake them up a little bit. I kind of like this now that I'm thinking about it more myself from G2 here, but it is a little bit of a risk. We'll have to see if it pays off them. W7M, of course, because of the fact that they were more than likely expecting Throne Room, they've got to go for quite a few repicks here. So the operator lineup's going to be changed up. Double soft breach being deployed. Oh, maybe it is. Hold on. It was flirting with an Ash there for a second, but Volps does end up going on. As we get both the Sledge and the Buck on top of, as well, those Rotero drones coming out from Julio. Very, very destructive combination of attackers here, focused very much on knocking down walls and opening up attacking routes more than anything else, just when you look across the board here.
Well, assume that these rounds will be slow rolling. That's usually what we see when it comes to theme park, is teams really do not want to make those brutal mistakes that they can find themselves crossing paths with early on in the rounds here. A lot of roaming game and just pressure across the building from the defense is usually what we see, and that's exactly what we'll get as Benjamin Master will tap up Herds just a tad bit. Nothing to really call home about. Get the Roteros going in here, and I do believe Julio might have gotten that one stuck or don't exactly know what happened. There's no mute jammers. Oh, probably a Mozzie Pest. Probably a Mozzie Pest around there. I didn't see the mute jammers, but more than likely got eaten up by that. So very well done there from Alamau to be able to prevent at least the initial Rotero drone from sneaking in through that drone hole.
I'm trying to send another one through here. Just eats up a quarter of his utility. Deployable shield will still be dealt with pretty quickly. w7m has struck first, though, finding Doki roaming around up on the second floor and eliminating him. Virtue in a bit of a hot spot here now because of that one. He has to rotate back out towards Arcade, and that is definitely not going to be a secure position to try and work towards here, so we'll have to follow that up for the next few seconds, see if they can successfully work their way down. It does look like that is the case, thankfully, since w7m did not really have a whole lot of pressure on that Arcade side. That will allow them, of course, to retreat back into the depths of the site. Still a player down, but at least they've returned some decent damage. And there we go. Got the confirmation off. On to Keys here, re-equalizing the scenario into a 4v4.
Now, KZ died so fast there, we literally got transcended to heaven. We didn't even get to see his point of view. It was ridiculous as he swung into yellow stairs. Volps is now trying to transition his way through Arcade and take out the player playing on the stairwell. That'll be a fairly straightforward affair. He'll take down Virtue. Benji now holding things down inside. A nice cross for him to get into a more pivotal position. EMPs to assist as w7m are hurling themselves towards this site, and it might end up being catastrophic here in a moment, as I don't believe they know about Alamau's position up top, but he's going to have to get away with a decent amount here. It can't just be one kill, it has to be a whole slew of them, and he might miss position. He does indeed. Hertz hears him. He'll take down Alamau, and they know where Benja is now, as he'll take out one of their friends outside. It's going to be the Goyo canister that deals a decent amount of damage to Hertz, but through the fire and flames is JV92, and w7m will claim the round.
All right, so a definitive statement for the players on w7m to take such a very one-sided attacking round here at the start of it. But keep in mind what we said at the beginning of it, not necessarily the expected site choice for G2 to go to initially here. They wanted to try and test their own defensive strength, and unfortunately tested it a little bit too much there, as w7m did not have much of a problem in trading things out, especially with them getting the opening kill and then just following it through past that point, just trading their way to a win essentially. So now G2 falls back onto the ever-reliable Armory site here to hopefully pick up their first defensive round.
I don't think it was exactly a terrible strategy to go over to drug and storage first, but definitely didn't bode too well for them. w7m getting a lot of control on the top floor that ended up making just things overly complicated for G2. They really didn't have a way to try and fight back against it, all except for Alamau kind of on an island upstairs trying to combat all of that himself. And I mean, all it takes is just a little misstep like what we saw, and all of that ends up going to the wayside anyways, and w7m have a pretty considerable round. So we're going to have to see what G2 can potentially do. Back to the drawing board for them, is you said they're going to be going back to Throne for the very first time here on their defensive set, to see if they can potentially get some things going on. This is usually the defensive site that we see teams adapt first, which is honestly why I expected it to be first, but obviously not the case. It'll be the second round this time around for G2.
Bomb located by attackers.
Oh. We've got G2 once again defensively primed up here. Still a bit of an extension going to be deployed by them elsewhere across the map. You can see those two silhouettes still messing around up on the second floor, so that'll need to be checked off the list first, more than likely by w7m, where they can proceed forward, get deeper into the actual site. Doki continues to maintain positioning just on the inside of Dragon here. Could potentially leave him exposed to be the first player down again, but no, this time it's Virtue that finds his own opening pick instead with a little bit of a jump out there. Able to find out Volps and eliminate him. It's on the way back in here. Herds, in the meanwhile, is quickly trying to work on the yellow wall back into the site, but there's still presence from the defenders on yellow stairs, so no way is that going to work. Immediately, both of those Selmas are shot out. Another bad intel call, just an overzealous push leads to the elimination of most of the hard breach utility the attackers had access to, but Keys thankfully going to make up for this at least in some dividends now by pushing himself directly into the and taking it.
KZ quickly dispatching 2, and now the rest of W7M hot to trot. 3 kills for him, all on the 417. The biggest play from the DMR that we've seen this entire LAN is now down to Virtue, the man that got the opening kill. He'll get the second for G2, but he'll be the last to die as W7M pick up their second round.
W7M coming into this one with a tear. Did not look like they were going to be able to follow through into the site so successfully after Doki. There we go. Did not look like they were going to be able to follow it through so successfully when you consider the fact that their hard breach got just hard denied basically there. They tried to throw both the Selmas at the wall and they were immediately shot out because there was still presence on yellow stairs. Then we see KZ just, Dragon Door's open and like, I don't think there's anyone here. So he just walks right in, finds 2 picks along the way because Armory was either unprepared for that push or didn't have Overwatch for it. Gets another one rotating in through Connector as well, trying to push a smoke, and it just lambs the slaughter at that point with the way G2 is playing it.
Well, these defenses obviously not boding too well for G2 at the current moment. Have to look to try and change some things up. They're going to send it over to Daycare. See what they can potentially get done here. Bunker, usually a pretty solid spot to sit around, as well as the arcade balcony. Looks like they're going to try and extend things out over into initiation. We see this quite often with some teams, as they will have some mirrors to be able to support this as well. The other one more than likely over on the yellow stairs. Yes, indeed. It'll be up top there. And they'll be holding this from the west towards the east, trying to prevent W7M from coming in on this side. But we've also seen how adept W7M have been so far at changing up how they want to try and go about this. And, well, it seems like they just want to go about it quickly. I don't even know if Volps knew that he had the shotgun as a primary there. Benjit apparently didn't know that anything was broken either. Volps is going to gun him down. It's going to be a quick trade, but is any W7M member even relatively close to try and build anything off of this? No. I think it's going to be an even trade, and we're going to go back to basics.
Very strange from Volps there, as we've seen very well-coordinated pushes like that in the past and built off of the Gara hook plays as well. But as you mentioned, just no one even nearby ready to support that. It seems Herds maybe was in the area looking at his current position, but a bit of a weird one there, as at least it gets them a 1-for-1, but it just seems like it happened a minute or so too early into the round. That may have been part of it, in all honesty. That may have just been part of the plan from Volps. It's like, all right, let me immediately hop in here where they may not be expecting me in those first few seconds of the round, and maybe I'm able to establish a hard point that my teammates can join about 10 to 20 seconds later, but just did not end up panning out there. So we go down to a 4v4 as there's basically just a one-and-done 1v1 gunfight that starts us off there.
Well, past that, not too much action going on. Some solid positioning here from W7M as they're able to use Buck to his fullest advantage. That Skeleton Key working its way up through the floor and forcing a move from G2. Alamau looks to try and abuse some of those angles that had just opened up, but he just got too overzealous. Herds playing the counter angle not only gets him, but as well as Virtue here from security. JV92 will make the situation even worse, and now it's all down to Doki. Has the MX4 Storm, but he doesn't have air to breathe as he's suffocated out by W7M.
W7M are not only winning these rounds, they are winning them quick as heck, man. At least 2 out of 3 of these, I think I've been won inside of the first 2 minutes. Very, very well done by W7M. As soon as they see blood in the water, they are not wasting any time. They are swarming that krill and eating it up as quickly as possible here. It's going to trigger an immediate timeout from G2, seeing the way these first 3 rounds have played out. Maybe he needs to get into this one and give his input, as it is a rough time at the moment for G2, seeing just how quickly they are falling apart on a round-to-round basis.
It's a very interesting moment here. That was his way.
I think it was just like, I honestly don't even think he was expecting it to fight that early. I think he just wanted to establish positioning and just see how long he could hold it, and maybe his teammates would have been able to group up with him. Like, it was just like a gamble strat, I think, essentially.
I'm more completely blown away.
It all worked out at the end of the day. So
yeah, true. I mean, yeah.
We can't fault it that much.
That is the most damnedest things when that happens, I swear. You'll be trying to help one of your friends with something, you'll be like, hey, like, this is the way that you want to do this. And they do the most confound thing you've ever seen in your life, and then it works. And they're like, well, why can't I do this?
I don't know how much it contributed to the overall round win, but like,
right? It's like,
it got G2 down a player, so I guess.
I mean, technically it was an opening kill. So
yeah.
positive in the entry stat.
Stat padding.
Yeah,
My favorite activity.
Maybe I need to start playing some more Amaru now that I'm thinking about it. Huh.
It's the ultimate way to just go in chat and say, well, I got my ones.
I got my frag.
I don't know what you guys are doing.
I got my frag.
I'm even. I don't know about you, but
I just don't even understand how they didn't hear him fly through the window. I think that was the key thing for me.
they may have, and then just like not thought he was that much of a threat or something like that.
Yeah, Benja apparently thought he was no threat. He thought it was like a tea party in break room or something.
Just a very weird play to open up the last round. But we're well beyond that now, moving into the 4th round here. Let's take a look and see if w7m is going to continue to have that degree of success, or if G2, of course, has been able to recenter themselves a little bit better after that tack pause and the input from their coach. And that's going to be a slow roll from them. No one trying to challenge these initial window pushes. You have one player from G2. If it's similar to the past rounds, it's probably going to be Doki, messing around with the dragon doors here, but not really in a position to get hyper-aggressive around that. Doki's actually fallen back since then. He's going to be able to set up some deployable shields a bit closer to the sight zone here. Hopefully cause some trouble for w7m, who is, as usual, proceeding quite slowly here inside of the first minute. w7m definitely wanting to build up a good intel bag before they try to make their first moves. Once they make that move, though, it generally doesn't tend to slow down past that point, at least in the first 3 rounds we've seen so far.
No, it seems w7m have a pretty expansive bag of tricks, and they are more than willing to use it on anybody that wants to be on the receiving end. And it looks like G2 obviously is the one that's lined up across from them at the current moment. And it's going to open up yet again here. Alamau goes down. He had such a successful Kafe, but it's been a slow start here so far on Theme Park. G2, it looks like the game is starting to get away from them. Benja starting to take some considerable damage here as well on the arcade balcony. Herds in, he's dusted. Equalizers here for G2 Esports as they'll pull ahead actually in the man count. Here at 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining. Volts will work his way into the building. They've slowed things down surely.
Certainly have caused some bigger issues here for w7m by cooling off the aggressive tendencies of G2, sticking into their angles much more heavily, not going for these bigger swings as we'd been seeing in the previous rounds here. They're holding it much closer to the chest, even inside of their own extensions here. That's leading to more success for them in the early gunfight so far in round number 4 here. But Julio, with that pickup, has re-equalized the equation yet again, back down to a 3-0 scoreline, or 3-all scoreline. Time to see here now if they can continue to make up the difference, or if G2 has too strong of a hold now. Benja coming close to being clipped off there as he moves forward just to take out a drone as well. But will be able to successfully shift back deeper into the site. Volps potentially next up to bat here as he's reached arcade balcony. Tries to push himself forward. Doki, the nice swing out, catches one, but once more, Julio equalizes us for a second time here with his pick. Doki continuing to snipe out everyone on w7m, and then Virtue finally coming in there to pick up the last one as well. Nicely held by G2 as we finally see them on the board on round 4. Doki's really tunnel visioning.
No, I'm pretty sure that Fabian like fist bumped him like 7 times. He just kept like bumping him like, do it again, do it again, do it again. Like, man, you know what? I really have been enjoying watching Fabian coach this team so far. It's been very energetic. I think it's a perfect role for him, honestly, you know. So pretty cool stuff. G2 finally able to get their first round on the board, and it was definitely fighting fire with fire. There was really no ifs, ands, or buts about the utility usage there. It was all who wants to take a gunfight with who, and who's more successful in said gunfight. That time around, finally G2 is Doki has found himself yet again.
We have w7m, still with a few repicks to be flushed out here. KZ, for instance, going to be going over to the Sense, which should be interesting to see. Obviously, still a pretty rare pick in terms of competitive Siege here. We do not see them being brought out all that often, just because of the fact that they are quite difficult to make work appropriately. The utility can be somewhat difficult to use in the way that you want to, unless you're just trying to draw a straight line. So as a result of that one, it's few and far between that we actually see the Sense get brought in, but it seems like w7m has found some use for it on this round, so they will find their way into the game.
The aggressive angles here from G2 as Doki will be out on the cash balcony. Seen so many players using this for the opening portions of Theme Park. We're gonna see if they can get an easy kill here on the cash balcony. Nothing doing this time around. Doki will get the hatch open as well as a drone for his troubles. He'll skipper back off into the actual building. Doesn't want to take too early of a gunfight here with W7M, especially when it's the entire onslaught on this portion of the building.
Approaching the 2-minute mark here now, which means we should start to see some opening action. Some opening bids for map control being laid out by the W7M roster. Herd specifically has the lineup in a Dragon. No way G2 is going to make the same mistake that was made on this site the last time here, so they do have a much bigger Overwatch in the actual site this time to prevent a straight walk-in from someone on W7M, which was how they were able to take it the last time this site was played out here. G2, aside from that though, still a bit of an extension, deployed out over toward the arcade side of the map, holding on to the dorms, for instance, as well as the break room next to it. Need to eventually peel that back. Probably will want to do so relatively soon. W7M is not too tripped up by the roam game right now. They are focusing very heavily on the site. Now having access to one of the electrical breaches, they can begin to move forward, but Doki still doing a fantastic job of finding these roaming picks as he gets another one to start this round off here. JV going down first, KZ to keep the numbers even though.
Back and forth we go in between these two. 1 minute and 5 seconds remaining for W7M to burst into this site. Doki, I do think, considering a little damage towards his teammate there just for a split second, but not enough to call home about. Blur trying to prevent this plant from going down on the Osa shield, and she's playing back into this now as well. Virtue, oh my, has he actually made the play here? He has indeed. Pre-fire's coming through. He's got the angle on the Osa, and he's got the stoppage, but there's so much time for W7M to try and work out this puzzle.
W7M once again always fighting towards the bitter end of it, and oftentimes in these sorts of scenarios here where they're working a 2vx. So Julio and Herd's going to try to group things up. Yellow Wall has been taken down first here to potentially allow them in. Not immediately going to use it though, it's more of a distraction than anything to try and get some of the eyes from G2 hyper-focused on that angle. And it has indeed worked. One player from W7M is eventually going to push in from this one, but the other trying to work the connector angle here. They're going to try to play it together. Those Legion mines though, tripping them up, no time to peel them out. Blur more than ready for the challenge. Him and Virtue have no problem fending off the last two pushes from W7M, and as such, another round is found for G2.
All the way to 3.
Easily done there for G2 in the dying moments of round 5. As well, looks like they might finally be able to find some semblance of success here and get the equalizing round. That could make this a pretty interesting affair when it comes to the second half. You know, W7M has looked pretty dominant, especially when it came to their defenses on Kafe. Theme Park, some similar circumstances when it comes to the defensive play. I'd say it's even more expansive in the ways that you hold things, just given the size of the map per floor. So W7M could definitely be using that to their advantage in the near future. Round 6, our very last round of this half. Now on the board is G2. Will be defending Initiation and Office. They're going to be bringing the mirrors back into play here. Everything else making quite a bit of sense in what we usually see teams tend to lean on in a position like this.
So, spawn from W7M is going to roll out in about 10 seconds here. No drastic repick showing up for them, just to, oh, never mind. That seems we're going to get quite a few of them after all here. The Twitch being swapped in, Nomad being swapped in, Lion being swapped in, and Dokumi being swapped in as well. W7M want to get a lockdown on the G2 here now, but I'm not entirely sure if this is going to work in the way that they think it will here. G2, like I said, has kind of cooled off the aggression quite a bit, save for Doki. He's been given the free reign to do whatever the heck he wants in the early round here. So there's a pretty low chance that the Nomad air jabs and as well as some of these other pieces of utility may actually lock into a target, but we'll have to wait and see how everything unfolds here for W7M. Once they start to peel their way towards the site, we'll get a bit of a clearer picture in terms of how they're going to want to use all of this.
W7M will be starting things off on the Dragon side. Have a couple of players over towards Kafe. G2 already showing teeth, though. As they will tag up a couple of players. Doki, although, also taking a little heat for his sake as well. W7M not wanting to hop to just yet, as they can sense that G2 is trying to get this opening pick dealt with very early on right now. So they're going to go into the drone game and see if they can try and find an area they could abuse pretty handedly. It's starting to look like it might be building up towards that cache side. Have some drones in on the arcade area, but I don't think we'll be seeing a swing anytime soon here from the likes of the Volps.
And continuing to wait for the first bit of aggression to really start swinging in here from W7M. Yet to see them commit to any hard points closer to the site itself, meaning G2 still has a very stalwart hold. Could potentially change over the next few minutes. Herd's getting tripped up there as he goes in by one of the alibi clones. That's going to reveal him for a few seconds, but quickly corrects upon that one. Has positioning inside of the site now. He just has to keep it and leave room open for the rest of his teammates to also rotate into this one. Julio holding a flank, can't move forward. Doki successfully pierces the veil anyway. Takes down Julio. KZ will be able to trade out for one, but there's still fire back coming in from other members of G2. W7M down a player. Needs to get a double kill here to be able to equalize this situation back under their own control and still have a chance to push out and find a plant for themselves here. They're split up now as well. Volps laying down the hatch. He's not been able to spot Doki, and I think he's made it out there. Nicely played by Doki on this round as well. Pretty much single-handedly delaying this push in its entirety between the kills he got at the beginning and the play he just made there on the inside of control. 30 seconds left here. Let's see how W7M tries to piece this together.
Oh, it's been so difficult for them. Trying to deal with G2. They're constantly hounding them on these angles. The Bulls in the Bronx taking it to them. W7M cannot find a single lifeline at the current moment. Time and time again, the timing's not working out. The moment they look away from an angle, G2 shows up. They deal the death blow towards W7M. And Alamau and the rest of the gang will be able to pick up yet another slow fist bumps here for the God Lord Fabian of G2. As they're looking to try and reclaim the lead here after that round. 3-3 here after the half on Theme Park. G2 now on the offensive side of things.
So G2 able to even things out, bring themselves back from the brink, it would seem, after W7M got off to a booming start. Great input certainly came in during that tactical timeout. And that's immediately when we saw the turnaround from G2. Started to see them really excel here to bring things back under their own control to keep this game even. Now it's time to see if that is going to carry forward onto the attacking side as well. W7M has been bested quite often here throughout the course of this series, but they have generally always seemed to have a pretty reliable defensive game. And now on another defensive-sided map, this could be just what they need, that nice little boon to get them over the edge. But they'll have to start off on the right foot here, as they lost their edge, of course, on that attacking side. Only picking up the first 3 rounds for themselves here. G2 taking a solid 3 in direct response to that.
Well, now this is where everything starts to really matter. Everything bubbling to the surface now for both of these teams. W7M and G2 a half away from being able to claim this long and hotly contested best of 3. Both of these teams considered the best in the business when it comes down to it. Some of the biggest and brightest names in all of Rainbow Six Esports on their respective rosters. And it's all come down to this one half of Rainbow Six that could be forced to overtime if it continues on this teeter-totter that we've seen so far in between these two.
So, G2 yet again up on the outskirts of Kafe. Ready to move themselves forward. A couple nades going to be chunked in here. We'll deal with some of the Kiva barricades that KZ put up a few moments prior, but still will leave the position relatively safe. KZ, though, roaming out and about over here by the arcade window. Really caught out for just a second there. At least one bullet connecting onto him. Forces him back a little bit further into the depths of those staircases there. And in the meanwhile, because of the lack of an Overwatch on Office, well, Bender's been able to walk right up here, take full control of the rest of the second floor. Thankfully, this is all by design of W7M. He has not been able to align himself with any of the actual players from the W7M roster as of yet here, but will potentially come close to it. He tries to go for the swing into the bathroom, where we still have at least one member of this defensive setup trying to play for a hold onto Lab.
So very close are these two teams. Only a few meters separating them from the very opening kill of this round. Could be a big one as well. It's going to be on to Blur. The ace now down. Volps looking to make this even worse for G2. Some stuns in and some crucial shots missed as Alamau will take him down with the SMG-12. Out of all things, don't get to see that weapon all that much anymore, but he makes good with it inside of this scenario.
Hurts, not expecting the top down angle there, will take quite a bit of damage from it. Thankfully, on the Oryx, has access to the dash and can use that to get himself into another safe position here, but that doesn't mean it's going to remain that way. They still know he's on the inside of barrels. Can be taken down at a moment's notice here, but Still causing a bit of a slowdown for G2 overall, as they have yet to really synchronize any good positions they can use to get into the actual throne room here. So will be finally found out as he goes down on the inside of that barrels position. Like we said, that took a good 20 or so seconds to eliminate him, and now G2 still 4 players standing, yes, but 3 out of 4 of them going to be forced to try and make a play through connector here. Nitro going to be chucked in as well to attempt to fend off the breach attempt being made here, but unfortunately, it lands just a bit too low. G2 still making their mark, though. Alamau starts us off strong, and Toki and Benja follow it through as G2 are able to steal the first round defense when didn't even really look like they were going to be able to make it work, to be honest with you. Had access to very minimal map control, had to push their way through the connector, but still got the job done.
That was a hell of a shot call right there. Get everybody focused on what could potentially be going on around the breach, and then just send it right in through split. Absolutely fantastic, and probably the shot call coming from Virtue right there. That's probably why he's giving him so much praise, is just being able to send it at the proper time, completely catching W7 off guard. You can see not a single person was really paying attention to what was going on with Split, and all of a sudden there was just a preposterous amount of G2 members inside of that hallway.
And so G2 get away with the first one of the second half here. Stealing it after a last-ditched effort ends up paying out quite successfully here. W7m was not expecting such a coordinated push to work itself through the connector doorways there. Had to bow down to the entry prowess that G2 presented on that previous round. G2 also going to be swapping in towards the Amaru here. So we have potentially some interesting action going on. JV really struggling with this hop-up for some reason.
5 seconds to go.
There you go.
Hey, very well done.
It took him like 20 tries to do that.
It happens. That one's kind of finicky. That one is a little finicky. You kind of just sprint and spam the hell out of your space bar. And
hope you make the connection.
Just pray. Pray to the Ubi gods and hope that you get up on that. Otherwise...
he needs like a turbo macro for his space bar there or something.
I think it used to be that you could get up on like
I thought you could get up on the railing and then do it that way.
Yeah, but the railing's like a little bit more finicky now as well. Because if I remember,
okay.
I think I might be wrong about this, but I think they changed the hitbox a little bit where you're a little bit more slippery on it when you stand, so it's just easier to do it via that. But past that, some other things are a pretty slippery slope. Losing your hard breach early on. Oh my God. JV92 hip fired down by Alamau with the G8. He's going to continue on this reign of terror as he is tearing things up on the arcade side.
JV92 is a little bit upset right now. I'm just going to make that call for him, as that was so nice for G2 to have that lineup. The stars really aligning for Alamau, though, to have that single hip fire shot end up being a headshot.
It looked like someone out of Apex. It just like he just pulled up on him and immediately eviscerated him, all with hip fire. And it's gotten G2 down to this point. Alamau still alive. W7m attempting to thrive, but definitely not in the man count. 2 versus 3 as G2 is in full control here. KZ still looking to try and capitalize on the positioning of G2 at the current moment, as they haven't fully sent it towards site just yet. And he'll be able to at least pick up one, but my God, Doki-san, what a shot. Just milliseconds after his teammates down, instantaneously turns on a dime and removes KZ from play. It's up to Julio. We'd love to see a big round from him here inside of this one. Hasn't had something massively considerable just yet, but it could be the time. Has to get a mag back in this gun. Oh, and it's so very close, but Doki will close it out. He thought he was going to be swinging from the right, but it was to the left, and just those little amount of pixels are the difference between a win and a loss. G2 able to win it out in that situation.
Great attempt there, but you got to give credit to Doki here. He has been consistent as a rock on the inside of this game right now, leading the charge for his team by a pretty heavy score marker as well. 11-4 right now. The next highest teammate is Benja, down at 7 and 6, with the rest of the team falling pretty close behind. Some lights out gameplay from him, especially when it came to the roam presence we had been seeing out of him on the defensive side. He's carrying that forward here onto the attacker's end of it now here with that nice closeout to stop the clutch from coming through. W7m getting a little worried about their situation now, so their timeout will come through.
Absolutely. This is the time to use it. I mean, G2 are making massive strides on the offensive side right now, and especially Doki shutting down a lot of what W7m was initially trying to pull off. Past, obviously, Alamau having that initial little interaction, we'll call it, with W7m inside of break. It's all really been the G2 show so far. W7m hasn't really gotten too much going on this defensive side. Constantly fighting from a man down, perspective. It just makes things really difficult because you can't do some of the high-flying things that you really want to do because it's so risky.
The case, and with the w7m now up against the wall, what will they change up potentially? What will they do differently here on these rounds to try and recenter themselves, try and bring it back from the brink? We'll certainly be finding out here. In terms of operator selection, nothing crazy going to be deployed towards it. We do have some mirror action that's going to come out here for Julio, but certainly workable inside of this site specifically here. So we'll present hopefully some better opportunities to swing out and find some earlier picks against G2, which w7m has been struggling a bit with here as of the past 2 rounds. For G2 though, a few repicks coming up for them. We were flirting with the Amaru repick again, but it seems Blur has gone for something much more traditional and is going instead for the Nomad to flank watch for the rest of his team. Benja, of course, getting a little bit sneaky on the Nook, and then Alamau will add the Dokkaebi in for that extra bit of intel.
G2 going to be locking up some portions of the building, at least for window play. Don't want w7m flying out of those anytime soon. G2 trying to get some positioning around the cash balcony as well here, as this looks to be the starting position for them. They'll also get Benji going down around the lockers area, see if he can have some influence around the yellow stairs. Logic bombs in. This looks to be fast moving here from G2. They don't want to slow down up against w7m, and you can't necessarily blame them. Their foot on the gas has been a fantastic thing, but it seems like it might be something that has to be kicked down the road just a little while longer, simply because of that proximity sensor, knowing that Benja was in the area. So see if you can possibly get something done with maybe a frag grenade underneath or a potential late rotation once it's called upon from G2.
Activating presence reduction.
G2 continuing to play this very, very slowly. I think waiting to see if Benja can potentially strike first here, if there's going to be an opportunity. So he clears out the entirety pretty much of the first floor here. It's not going to be able to spot much from it. We're looking at him priming a nade, I think, just a second ago, but ends up unclicking it. Here we go. Now he's got the yellow ping for it. No movement either. This should be a winner. And there we go. Herds down for the count as G2 strikes first yet again.
In sync moment there. Baby bye bye bye. As Herds will go down. w7m finally able to get something going here. They'll equalize, but it might change up quickly. Yep, Alamau, he knew exactly where that was going to be going due to the logic bomb that came through. The phone calls working out so well, as well as the EE1Ds, but somehow Julio's still allowed to stay alive and still allowed to get these 2 kills. Really, really considerable stuff coming out of him, given the circumstances of an EE1D and a logic bomb all going off in his back pocket all at that moment. But now for G2, they have to try and pick up these pieces, which was not something that I was really considering saying going into the initial portions of this interaction, but somehow w7m have came out on top. G2 had everything at their disposal to figure out and eliminate all of the w7 members from their positions around the site, but just simply couldn't get it done. Julio with a heck of a play inside of break.
Did you just figure out what their team name means?
w7m?
Yeah, w7 members. Like, I don't.
Maybe.
Winning with 7 members.
Winning 7 members.
That's a really bad team. That's what it actually is.
I'll give you a T.
I don't think that's it though.
I was gonna say I'll give you a T for nice try. I don't really think it's that. But
that's like 2 a.m. acronym. Pick it up right there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes indeed. But I think they might need a lot more than 7 men to get this accomplished right now. Although they were able to get that 1 round, they now have to go back to some successful sites for G2, and that might not bode that well for them. There's only one way to figure that out. Well, it's play the damn game, isn't it? So we'll see what happens after this prep phase. w7m is going to throw it sky high for their setup. KZ will be holding down that top floor with a couple of different barriers around, as well as some of these hatches getting sealed up, so that G2 do clear things out, they won't have such ease of access towards the actual site.
All right, well, we do have a dead member of w7m. 10 seconds into the round
I just looked down at my notes, man. Come on. Come on.
Slaying it out here as he is more than prepared for the spawn peak from Herds there on the Oryx. Slaps him down to the ground, and immediately G2 has the front-running lead. Doki, like I said, consistent as ever inside of this map specifically. Knocking out Keys as well, or KZ, excuse me. Bringing it down to only 3 here for w7m.
Literal pixel of KZ's head exposed off that barrier.
It was the same for Herds, too. Herds, like, I don't even think he saw the player that took him down.
That's just disgusting, man. Touch grass or something. I mean, come on. My God.
There's not a whole lot of that here right now.
Yeah. Neither in Europe. It's probably pretty cold and crappy over there.
You want to touch the white snow or the brown snow? Like,
yeah. City snow is not that great. And, well, neither is the play from W7M right now. They're looking a little like that sloppy snow. They're getting taken down from every single angle. Nothing that they can do is finding any success for them, at least inside of this one. Volps will finally fight back. G2, though, they've gotten away with so very much. This is looking like map in match point.
Volps tried his best to stay in the situation, but is struggling, of course, here, considering the 1v4 that has been set against him. Not really much that he can realistically work towards at this point here, so this is going to be a 6th and penultimate round for the G2 roster. Volps getting away with at least one more here, but just really baiting for kills at this point. Not really trying to lead himself into a clutchable position here. If he gets another kill, he can probably try to swing towards it, which he's coming up on the precipice of that now. But yeah, Virtue ready for the challenge. Finally, G2 give us that expected result of the round and push themselves up to 6.
Good openings, guys. Good openings.
Fantastic stuff from G2. And yes, indeed, as you heard from the bench themselves, great openings, G2. Great openings, because that's exactly what it was. A nice stoppage for the opening blood, and then also Doki with a hell of a peek onto KZ inside of Cash. Again, you got to give him props. A pixel of that woman's head is showing, and he just eliminates it, all while on the move on Repel. That's just such a difficult shot to hit, but still capable, all in that moment. G2 now on map and match point, looking to take it out of the grasp of W7M, who looked so potent on Kafe.
G2 seemingly on a run that can't be stopped right now, but for W7M, they don't have a choice here. They've been fighting for so long inside of this series here now, bringing it back from the brink over on our first map, of course, and able to eventually take control there, but could not maintain that presence on map number 2, where G2 ultimately closed things down. Are they about to falter outright and give the third map over to their opponents as well? It's looking more and more likely with the way things are evolving over these past few rounds for W7M. Very much the same flair here for the throne room defense as they come back into it. So we are going to see the Azami for KZ to reinforce the innards of the site, the bandit batteries to try and prevent the wall openings from happening. JV92 will be somewhat contributing to effect on that one as well, and then Herds doing most of the work on roam game, I assume.
A lot slower start here for G2, but considering the last round, that is probably a good thing for both of these teams, as it means we got a lot more nuance going on, a lot more potential for W7M to elongate this game. G2 going to stick to their drone game here, so looking to work their way into Gong. Found themselves some positioning inside of maintenance as well. No one really home for W7M in this area at the current moment, trying to keep things moving around the map and mostly around the stairwells here, as we saw KZ at the top of Dragon. This is going to be a pivotal location, but it looks like he might quickly be dispatched. A frag grenade's going to deal quite a bit of damage, but now they know exactly where he is on top of all of that. Going to continue to be hotly contested rolling through this round.
KZ continuing to wait, see if a member of G2 is going to swing out from electrical there. We can challenge him back down, get that bigger advantage going into the favor of W7M, but have not been able to find that just as of yet here. G2 at the same time, though, are struggling in a similar way to find their footing, to swing this to the next step, to get themselves into the depths of Throne Room here. Still trying to look for that top-down nade kill, and they just can't seem to find it. W7M are far too mobile on the roam because they know that that's the current objective here, so they're not being baited into it.
Halfway through, G2 have not been able to find the opening kill. Some damage onto Herds. Doki trying to act quickly, usually so solid at this, but now a beautiful lineup here as Herds will be able to take down Blur. Some nice kills coming in, a drop shot, and Herds, so much damage dealt to him, but they can't get him down. Alamau will be the one to go. Benja finally fighting fire with fire, but how much does it really mean, all things considered? 2 versus 4, Herds on very low HP, and most of W7M now back onto site as this last minute has dawned us.
Herds and the rest of the extended game definitely getting the gold star for this round here, just wasting all the time and all the utility from G2, eventually forcing them to just be baited into an outright gunfight, where for the most part, Herds wins it all here in the mid-round. Beautifully played out. Not really expecting much of a hope for G2 to swing this one back under their own control, but let's wait and see here as Volps takes out the second to last member now. Virtue is all that remains. Heat 2 quickly dealt with by JV92 at the connector exit, giving W7M one more round here and one more chance to send themselves into overtime.
Yeah, once again, we have a chance for overtime. W7M can push us there, and Theme Park could get pretty weird, as it'll be a back and forth inside of OOT on a round-to-round basis for both of these teams, and so constantly be switching sides. So this will be the last time that G2 can close this one out inside of regulation. It all comes down to this, and a bunk daycare defense for W7M. They're going to be bringing the Mira along for the ride. G2 had some at least considerable things going that last round. Obviously, they'd love it to go a lot more like the prior round with the 2 easy opening picks for them and pretty smooth sailing past that moment, but W7M are not going to go down without a fight. G2, this is your time to put him in the grave.
So for G2, just one more round is still all that is needed for them. However, as you said, with W7M coming back alive, it seems, on the previous round, that singular round may be a bit more evasive than it first appeared. Not able to see G2 hit the ground running with the entries that they had done in previous rounds. That's, again, what I was talking about towards the tail end of the last play, when you consider that W7M's roam game caused a massive amount of the delay that eventually led to them winning. They previously were unable to achieve that status and just ended up giving up that control far too early in the round. If not, those players had been taken down outright. So as a result of that big improvement on that part of the game, this led to much greater struggles for G2 and potentially could trigger overtime if we see something similar happen on this final round.
Well, let's get into it. It's been a heck of a showing from Doki. It's been him as well as Herds and KZ going back and forth in a lot of these rounds. KZ really being the thorn in the side of G2, and he's looking to be that yet again. Also Benja as well, 11-9, the newest pickup for G2, and he's been lights out so far for them here at this tournament. A fantastic pickup off the heroic roster that's really been working out for them.
Countering their intel.
So Doki with the hop in here, just on the drone though, so taking any huge risks as of yet. Wants to go for the check on control before the rest of his teammates potentially are called to swing in through there. And I think he's actually the only one in the area too, so just going to be a lonesome play for himself here. JV92, a little bit of a reconstruction project for some of the utility, as he feels it's going to be much more useful over on this portion of the map, and I would generally tend to agree, especially now that we're a minute deep. It's not really going to be a hard point over there by the bathrooms that you want to deny drone intel from. It's the deeper parts of the map that are now more important, so we'll have to move that there behind the mirror window in hopes of potentially even saving it should there be a hard breach or something similar deployed towards it.
Minute and a half remaining. E1D out, but nobody dead just yet. Logic bomb as well. But all of this just to try and get some info on what the W7 members are. That might have been an ADS there. Nope, mute jammer instead. So that nade would have definitely landed, but they got the Wamai discs in the space as well. So that will allow him to escape instead. Still be blinded, but definitely alive. Some stuns in here from Blur to try and assist that situation a little bit more, but nobody really there to try and capitalize on something like that. Instead it'll be Doki onto KZ. What do we tell you? Back and forth these two go, and Doki might have finally gotten it done. The death blow to KZ might transcend the entire team unless Herds has something to say about it. He'll take down Alamau. That's going to be the Dokkaebi off the board here, and back and forth we go. W7M looking to force this overtime. Now G2, they need to recoup. They need these kills. Virtue will get one. Benjamin knows that somebody's close in the area, but he doesn't look tight enough. Volt sees the barrel, and he's able to take him down. It's up to Virtue. This 417, it's been so dastardly throughout the tournament, but it won't be good enough. W7M provide overtime for us here on Theme Park. We have a guaranteed 2 rounds ahead of us.
Second overtime is ignited in this series here. We go the absolute full distance to decide this one here. So let's get into it. 3 more rounds up on the tee. W7M gets a defensive start. G2 starts on the attacking side. First team to 8 will win out not only this map, but the series as well. So let's get into it here as we're back in Armory and Throne Room for W7M's first defense inside of OT. Important to note that as well, that all previously locked sites are now going to be unlocked for play for the defenders.
Well, looking into overtime now in between these two, G2 has been decently solid on offense, but all things considered, it's really been some of those knee-jerk plays where they've kind of had that hive mind mentality that's been getting things over on w7m. W7m, since those moments, though, has been able to compartmentalize G2 and take down a lot of the members that have been giving them just a lot of grief. So we'll see if they can continue to do that with this defensive round. This round right here means so very much to what is going to happen for the remainder of this OT, because they were both just on this side. It's just an extension of what was just happening. So both of these teams, knowing exactly what has happened recently, feeling themselves out. There's going to be a big round, a lot of guesswork going in from both of these squads to try and consider what the game plan will be for the other.
KZ first up to bat here in terms of trying to make impact against that roam game from G2, but may not be able to find any direct contestant to it here, as G2 is trying to go directly for Gong control, bypassing the Dragon take, at least for these first few seconds. They want to focus on the downstairs play first and set themselves up for a bit more success over here. Away from that, we're going to see them try to swing in, but Julio is waiting for this push to come forward. Alamau with the intel is at least able to trade it, but this is the problem. He was the only one in the site. Everyone else has to suddenly rotate back in. They're not confident in their ability to retake this through connector with the two players they have there. Alamau's already on top of that. Now we can see it. Benja, or whoever is the current case carrier, Doki in this case, moves forward. We'll get the plant down onto the ground behind Throne, as there's nothing w7m can do about that one. Blur has the overwatch from Gong now as well, so they can't rotate through yellow. This is perfect from G2 here. I don't know how w7m is going to stop this.
Well, they've gotten the plant down, but it looks like that might at least be a start. Alamau will be able to get one more, making this a 2 versus 2. Volp's pretty low on HP, but the same could be said about Alamau. Definitely going to consider that coming into these fights. KZ will go down. Volp's the last one that remains. Alamau will clean that one up as well. The Brazilian dealing it to his own brethren from across the pond. The European squad getting it done.
The talk is coming in now as well from Alamau as he gets a little bit of that yelling back. We saw w7m giving it out earlier on in the series. Now he's getting his revenge here as G2 that much closer to victory. Just one more round and they will have another barn burner of a series in their pocket. Keep in mind as well, they just went to a full 3-mapper yesterday versus Koi, beat them 2-1 as well. So this is a Herculean effort already in the group stage for G2 just across these 2 days, having played both their series to a full 3 maps so far.
I can already hear all the songs being made by the Brits about Alamau for all of his fantastic play. Not only inside of that round, but for the rest of the day, he's had some amazing highlight moments. That round right there, all Alamau. Completely. Logic bombs, everything else in between. Everybody gets bodied on the entry, and then just a couple of moments later, he slips through the cracks, gets that kill, and then plays that entire situation out perfectly. Maintains control of split to allow his teammates to get in. Maintains control over the planting space. Assists with the Dragon Door once they switch around. Like, there's just so many positive things there for Alamau inside of that round, and that might be it. You know, he might have gotten all the heavy lifting done here for G2 to take this series.
Let's find out if it is indeed going to be enough now, as the potential final round of the series begins with G2 still leading the charge here. w7m, of course, now on the attacking side. Some interesting choices on their lineup, specifically to bring, once again, the 0 in for JV92. They tried this once on map number 1 here, but the player got immediately picked. So you never really got to see the style they were trying to use this operator with. Get a better picture of it this time around here. Nades going in quite quickly as well here. Thankfully, that rotation path back onto the inside of the kids' room does save the defensive player's life under these circumstances. That explosion probably otherwise dealing some pretty serious damage. Oh, the timing for Virtue, though, just does not pan out. Scopes in, unfortunately, to his death as Herds is waiting for it and shuts him down. First kill of this round goes to w7m.
Scary look here for G2, but it's not something that they haven't dealt with before. Blur might be 2-10. Doesn't mean that he can't win the round for him. Still has a gun, it's still got bullets, and he's still one of the most skilled players in his age group. That's exactly why he's sitting on this G2 roster right now. Nothing but confidence for this squad. Same can be said for w7m. Gotten that opening kill onto Virtue, and now they're taking their sweet time. They do not want to mess this up. They've gotten the advantage up against the squad, but it can be easily taken away as well, especially as Alamau has been feeling himself, same as Doki. Very quick to take those fights, very quick and decisive fights as well. You really don't get a lot of say in those moments, do you, John?
No, you do not. Halfway through the round now. JV92, a dangerous cross here on the rappel, as you do still have Doki waiting just behind that window, and you know he wants to potentially try and play this out if any realistic chance to win it presents itself. He's already committed himself to far less dangerous fights. So we'll have to wait and see if he decides to ever go for this one, or if he's just going to maintain a general amount of respect between himself and JV92 on the outside of his window. He goes in from her. It's a little off the mark, though. No one really in that area from G2, and it's suddenly just gone dead quiet. Just as I say that, though. Blur snipes out Volps, eliminates the first member of the W7M roster. Then goes very quiet after that, but a nice snipe from Herds eliminates Salamal as he tries to play behind the bomb chassis. Benja ready for the challenge in through arcade window and now takes up the very mantle of that position. Herds, though, single-handedly bringing his team back from the brink as he knocks out Doki in one more. Everything now on Blur's hands here as it's come down to the 1v3.
I'm reloading.
The case is going to be on Julio. So many guns still have to try and take advantage of these angles.
It's an ace!
An ace for Hertz. Oh my, what a round for him as he is constantly at the forefront of battle for W7M inside of this situation. G2 had somehow worked it out to where they still had the ability to win that round. They had a certain man advantage. They had the ability to hold down the site. But when you look over at a player like Hertz, you let things like that happen, and more than likely not going to come to fruition. Constantly making the aggressive proper play and taking it to G2 inside of their own site. Now we're at the maximum round capacity, John. We've made it to the promised land. No matter what happens, this game is over after this. Somebody has to go home with this best of 3.
That's the second ace of the series from W7M as well. If I recall correctly, Volps or KZ managed to pick one up during map 1 also. So some massive individual performances coming out over the course of this series so far between the W7M members, but is the team cohesion enough? That's now the final question, of course, as we move into that last round. As you said, full 15 has been achieved for the second time now, and it is time to see who will win the test of it. G2 closed it out last time. Now we have to wait and see if W7M, after that amazing ace that came in there on the last round from Herds, is potentially going to slingshot themselves into the pole position for this series.
All right, let's get into it, shall we? Very last round here. Operator lineup looking very solid for G2. They have so much annoying utility, especially for the info game. You got the Lion, you got the Dokkaebi. W7M not going to be allowed to move around in a very aggressive way as long as those are up and abound. But they do have some options themselves. You know, they do have the Warden to get around the smokes, the Frost Mats to prevent some more aggressive play if somebody doesn't look where their feet are going, as well as KZ to try and thwart some of these drones that can work their way towards site a little bit later on here. You can already see that getting some work done, as well as G2's drone count already down to 4 active and 2 in the pocket, so something that they'll have to consider later on now.
KZ getting that info drip, of course, has the intel where all the drones are being played out from. E1D charge is in from G2. Expect some follow-up action onto that one, but it seems like things are going to remain pretty calm when everything is said and done. Just an nade chuck in from Blur to hopefully catch the players while they were immobilized, but nothing to be unleashed upon that, unfortunately. Away from that situation, though. Once again, you can see how tense the scenario is just by the inconsistency of both of these teams actually want to go for some sort of play here. So they continue to maintain a very quiet presence throughout this map here. Benja, of course, being one of the few exceptions to this one for members of G2 specifically, as he tries to lurk through on the Nook. The rest of the team just primed for a play. Doki, his life flashing before his eyes there as the Nitro is sent directly into his face. Thankfully, able to dodge it though, get out of the situation, and still keep himself at full HP in the process. Benja dodging death there also as another Nitro comes dangerously close to him. Thankfully, plenty of time to react to it though and get out of the way.
Down into the last minute. This is usually when things get very, very wrong. And yes, indeed, it'll happen. G2, they try to spring into the map in these dying moments, and we usually call it the hell minute when it comes to a situation like this, don't we? 5 versus 5, quickly 5 versus 3. After G2 walk into a frost mat and lose their best entry, everybody else is going to have to try and get something going here. It all starts with Virtue as he's working his way in from Kafe. Herds will dispatch him. Goes swinging. He'll find himself a Blur. Benja's gotten picked back up by Alamau. They're coming up the arcade stairwell. Back and forth they go, but Benja's going to quickly get gunned down. Alamau can't get it done either, and W7M get it done up against G2 here in this best of 3. Theme Park taking some time, but their play, their consideration, the strategy going into this working so very well for them.
G2 is able to avoid heartbreak in their opening match yesterday for an interregional play against Koi, but here going up against one of the rising teams in Latin America, w7m is able to best them with one final round, changing up their fate here. They take the series 2-1 and the lion's share of group stage points that would go along with it. Big congratulations to w7m. Had to follow through on this one. Had a great start to the series, but fell off a little bit towards the second map. Able to bring things back though and finally take that control in overtime here. They're looking strong to move forward further into this group.
Yeah, fantastic day from them. And I think honestly you can say the same about G2. Really, it was just
It's a great series.
Yeah, it was a great series. Just really that last map, Blur not really getting things done the way that he would want to. 3-12, I do believe, was his final stat line there, and that's not what you want when you go max OT. So a little unfortunate circumstance there for G2, but I mean, the team is still looking fantastic, all things considered. They've changed up quite a bit about this roster, you know, with given recent history, especially with Fabian coming in as a coach and everything else in between. But definitely a fun series, nevertheless.
And still 2 more games to go, of course, for both of these teams, I do believe. So plenty of opportunities for G2 to still rebound, keep themselves into it. But that'll do it for the 2 of us right now, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back a little bit later on for the final game of the day. But for now, we're going to send you guys to a break. We'll be back soon with the analysis test to break this one down.
I'm Nicholas Mortensen, but you know me as Pingu. I'm a 2-time Rainbow Six Siege World Champion and former top Rainbow Six Siege player in Pro League. Welcome to my Siege Ranked Bootcamp. We're talking 20 seconds left on the clock, you got the diffuser in hand, what do? Play the way that you're comfortable with, because you have confidence when you're in this position. That is when you're gonna be at your very best. Good luck.
Welcome back, friendos, to the Command Center. Back on the analyst desk, I'm Nostematic, your host. With me are Demo and XR Troika, and our winners are set in stone after probably what is the best series we've had so far at the group stage here at SI23. W7m inch out the victory as G2 bottle it on the last round. W7m run away with 2-1. I have to say, would you agree that this was the best game we've had so far at SI? Let us know, because I'm very fervent, I would say, in my defense of this statement.
I have a question.
Yes, Demo?
What does that word mean?
Fervent?
Yeah.
Adamant.
There you go for everyone who's like me out there.
You know what adamant is?
There's a lot of us. I know there's a lot of us like
That's
me.
okay. I don't, I'm not a language elitist or vocab elitist.
And he's saying he's not a languageist. Are you?
Well, I am a cunning linguist, but that's something else. Anyways, let's move on with our map-to-map breakdown. Map number 1 was up first in our best of 3 that went the way. We got it all, and it was on a bank. G2 7-4. Demo lad.
Yes. Bank, probably the surprise pick. I think we kind of looked at it and we thought, just generally been W7M's map that they usually ban first if they can. But I think G2 kind of took them by surprise. And I think G2 seeing opportunities there to really display a good showing of Bank. I think it helps. Whenever Virtue is showing up, you know they're having a good day.
Virtue's played really well today. G2 did a great job on Bank, especially in the early part. They got a 4-2 split on their attacking half, which is always a big thing. Yep. There was a couple of things that didn't really work out from W7M. They tried to play a little bit of clash. It did work in round number 1. It didn't work later on. It was one of those games that I think G2 did such a good job on that roam clear. There was little tricks being played by W7M. They were trying calves under desks. There was all sorts of stuff going on. And G2, while the droning wasn't perfect, and I don't think that Doki had droned under the desk, he was ready to react. And that sometimes is the most important thing.
The thing is, W7 ever try and play G2 at their own game.
Yeah.
You know, G2, they do that. They're going to be ready for all that.
Well, that was the adaptation that we got on Bank. 7-4 scoreline, like we said. But that wasn't, of course, the only map in this best of 3 series, because we did go all the way. So what about our second one, once the replays kind of die down for this series? Because I gotta say, just having the Monty ban might have been very helpful for G2 on this map. But once we got on to Kafe Dostoyevsky, the maps, the bans were completely different. Both teams reacting to one another in substantially different ways. A 7-5 in the comeback, W7M here, Ollie.
Yeah, W7M, I think they obviously had a fantastic first phase and they were able to pick up 5 of the first defensive rounds. Obviously, we know Kafe can be a map that teams struggle to attack on. It's difficult to say this map is attack side, this map is defend side, because that changes throughout region, but there is one constant in that, and that is Kafe is always going to be a difficult map to attack. G2 found that as well as most other teams. They really struggled on the entry. They lost that entry engagement every single round, bar 1 inside of that first 6, and I think they just came up against a big obstacle. Volps's 5K's ace in round 1 won't have done much for the mental of G2 going into that one, and it was just a very tricky game. I think they didn't get into it quick enough.
It didn't feel as if G2 really got into a rhythm. You know, starting off 3 rounds lost on the bounce, you know, at the beginning, I think that doesn't help you. And I think Cafe's a map where you just... it's probably one of the maps that we see the most, like, just stomps on, you know, like big numbers being put up. I mean, we kind of see, I think we had Kafe earlier with Sonics versus Wolves, and at 7-3, you know, right from the get-go, it was easy to see that stomp incoming, whereas on Kafe, if you don't kind of get into the way of things early and your opponents start doing it, momentum on Kafe is a dangerous thing.
It can really spiral out of control very quickly on Kafe Dostoyevsky. It's a very Dostoyevsky way of putting it. There's final Nitro to kind of end out on the round. G2 unable to close it out 2-0. That took us to map number 3 in the series on Theme Park, which had seen G2 on before yesterday, specifically And unfortunately for G2, but very fortunately for Brazil, the entire LATAM scene, and w7m, went to overtime, clawing back against G2, and took it 8-7 in OT. Demo.
Best map so far.
100%.
100% the best map so far. I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted that G2 couldn't get the win. I just look at Ollie and I think...
Really? I would have never thought that you, of all people, would be gutted that G2 lost.
Just so close, like literal 6-4 up, and then they take the first round over, and it's just...
It's the best way to end a best-of-3 series, though. A maximum overtime theme park. I'm not really complaining because it was an exciting one to watch.
Yep.
And I think that w7m did a great job of pulling it out of the bag right at the end. Again, we've commented already about how the entry kill was something that came quite easily to w7m over the course of the whole series. And that was the same inside of theme park, particularly in the overtime. They got the opening kill every single round of OT, and obviously that gave them a very big swing in the grand scheme of things. The other exciting thing about this game, and something that we haven't had as much in other games that we've seen so far, is the amount of multi-kills we've seen come through. We've had 2 aces inside of this series, and we had 19 multi-kills overall. So that's a 3K, a 4K, just players popping off left and right. And it's all sorts of different players as well. It wasn't just limited to any one person. Even Julio had a bit of time in there.
I also want to put things into perspective for a moment here. Everybody loves to just trash on G2. I get it. It's fun, right? It's G2, big org, big names, punching up, right? And yes, they've had a rough year, but actually they didn't. They still performed pretty well for the fact that they were in and out of different rosters, etc., for the whole year. They come here, nobody really thought about them at all. They go up against their first opponent yesterday, and they play incredibly well, absolutely roll over them. You go now for the second game, right? They go up against w7m. How many of us here have been saying w7m probably top 3 in the tournament?
Nearly everybody.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody with
they are a favorite, yeah.
And then G2 pushes them to the edge, almost beating them. Coin flip would have been either one of them.
If you told me 3 months ago that G2 would be pulled into a group with Koi and w7m, and they'd been able to take 4 points against both of them, like combined, you'd be laughing. You'd never expect that. I think they've done really well, not only to obviously get the win against Koi, but even taking a point is really good for them, because now I suppose the pressure's on Rogue. They still have to go up against w7m. Rogue.
Koi.
Done it again.
Koi.
We're used to it.
Of course it is, and they have to now go through w7m, so the pressure's on them to almost get a map in.
So now our Group A matches. Let's recap that for you and how the scoreboard looks in Group A before at least our part is done for the day, and signing off on it. w7m with 7 points on the board. Space Station and G2 tied. That's because, for those that might be asking, if you win 2-0, you get 4 points, and that was what w7m was able to do yesterday. And G2, unfortunately for them, they only won 2-1, which gave them the 3 points that they did. However, since today they pushed w7m and got 1 map out of it, they still add another point to their system. So Koi still with 1 point. That was the G2 versus Koi from yesterday. That is where we stand in Group A of Six Invitational 2023. Any final thing you'd like to say, Ollie, before we wrap our part up?
I mean, the one game that I'm looking forward to that's coming up is going to be the Secret and Heroic one.
Well, I want to see Secret.
That's the one that I want to watch. We watched Secret through the Last Chance qualifiers, and for me, I just want to see if they continue that form through into the playoffs. All
right. Demola, thank you very much. You'll be casting later on today with Emmy, right? So Hap, we hope you're doing well. Thank you very much, Ollie, for being with us here on the desk. Thank you all for watching. We're not done. Of course, we're going to swap out the desk here and give a warm welcome to Jackie. She'll be here in just a few minutes. Thanks so much. Hey, see you next